Beyond the Vanishing Point by Ray Cummings. Chapter 1. The Fragment of Quartz. It was shortly after noon of December 31st, 1960, when the series of weird and startling events began which took me into the tiny world of an atom of gold, beyond the vanishing point, beyond the range of even the highest-powered electric microscope. My name is George Randolph. I was, that momentous afternoon, assistant chemist for the Ajax International Dye Company, with main offices in New York City. It was 12:20 when the local exchange call sorter announced Allen's connection from Quebec. "You, George? Look here, we've got to have you up here at once. Chateau Frontenac, Quebec. Will you come?" I could see his face imaged in the little mirror on my desk. The anxiety, tenseness in his voice was duplicated in his expression. "Well," I began. "You must, George. Babs and I need you. See here." He tried at first to make it sound like an invitation for a New Year's Eve holiday, but I knew it was not that. Alan and Barbara Kent were my best friends. They were twins, 18 years old. I felt that Alan would always be my best friend, but for Babs my hopes, longings went far deeper, though as yet I had never brought myself to the point of telling her so. "I'd like to come, Alan, but—" "You must! George, I can't tell you over the public air. I've seen him. He's diabolical. I know it now." Him? It could only mean, of all the world, one person. "He's here," he went on. "Near here. We've seen him today. I didn't want to tell you, but that's why we came. It seemed a long chance, but it's he, I'm positive." I was staring at the image of Alan's eyes. It would seem that there was horror in them, and in his voice. "God, George, it's weird, weird, I tell you. His looks, oh, I can't tell you now. Only come." I was busy at the office in spite of the holiday season, but I dropped everything and went. By 1 o'clock that afternoon I was wheeling my little sport midge from its cage on the roof of the Metropole building and went into the air. It was a cold, gray afternoon with the feeling of coming snow. I made a good 250 miles at first, taking the northbound through-traffic lane which today the meteorological conditions had placed at 6,200 feet altitude. Flying is largely automatic. There was not enough traffic to bother me. The details of leaving the office so hastily had been too engrossing for thought of Alan and Babs, but now, in my little pit at the controls, my mind flung ahead. They had located him. That meant Franz Poulter, for whom we had been searching nearly 4 years. And my memory went back into the past with vivid vision. The Kents, 4 years ago, were living on Long Island. Alan and Babs were 14 years old, and I was 17. Even then, Babs represented to me all that was desirable in girlhood. I lived in a neighboring house that summer and saw them every day. To my adolescent mind, a thrilling mystery hung upon the Kent family. The mother was dead. Dr. Kent, father of Alan and Babs, maintained a luxurious home, with only a housekeeper and no other servant. Dr. Kent was a retired chemist. He had, in his home, a chemical laboratory in which he was working upon some mysterious problem. His children did not know what it was, nor, of course, did I. And none of us had ever been in the laboratory, except that when occasion offered we stole surreptitious peeps. I recall Dr. Kent as a kindly, iron-gray-haired gentleman. He was stern with the discipline of his children, but he loved them and was indulgent in 1,000 ways. They loved him, and I, an orphan, began looking upon him almost as a father. I was interested in chemistry. He knew it and did his best to help and encourage me in my studies. There came an afternoon in the summer of 1956, when, arriving at the Kent house, I ran upon a startling scene. The only other member of the household was a young fellow of 25, named Franz Poulter. He was a foreigner, born, I understood, in one of the Balkan protectorates. and he was here, employed by Dr. Kent as a laboratory assistant. He had been with the Kents at this time 2 years. Alan and Babs did not like him, nor did I. He must have been a clever, skillful chemist. No doubt he was. But in aspect he was, to us, repulsive. A hunchback, with a short, thick body, dangling arms that suggested a gorilla, barrel chest, a lump set askew on his left shoulder, and his massive head planted down with almost no neck. His face was rugged in feature, a wide mouth, a high-bridged, heavy nose, and above the face a great shock of wavy black hair. It was an intelligent face, in itself not repulsive. But I think we all three feared Franz Polter. There was always something sinister about him, quite apart from his deformity. I came that afternoon upon Babs and Polter under a tree on the Kent lawn. Babs, at 14, with her long black braids down her back, bare-legged and short-skirted in a summer sport costume, was standing against the tree with Polter facing her. They were about of a height. To my youthful imaginative mind rose the fleeting picture of a young girl in a forest menaced by a gorilla. I came upon them suddenly. I heard Polter say, "But I love you, and you are almost a woman. Some day you'll love me." He put out his thick hand and gripped her shoulder. She tried to twist away. She was frightened, but she laughed. You're crazy." He was suddenly holding her in his arms, and she was fighting him. I dashed forward. Babs was always a spunky sort of girl. In spite of her fear now, she kept on laughing, and she shouted, You let me go, hunchback." He did let her go, but in a frenzy of rage he hauled back his hand and struck her in the face. I was upon him the next second. I had him down on the lawn, punching him. But though at 17 I was a reasonably husky lad, the hunchback, with his thick, hairy gorilla arms, proved much stronger. He heaved me off, and then the commotion brought Alan. Without waiting to find out what the trouble was, he jumped on Polter. Between us, I think we would have beaten him pretty badly, but the housekeeper summoned Dr. Kent, and the fight was over. Polter left for good within the hour. He did not speak to any of us, but I saw him as he put his luggage into the taxi which Dr. Kent had summoned. I was standing silently nearby with Babs and Alan. The look he flung us as he drove away carried an unmistakable menace, the promise of vengeance. And I think now that in his warped and twisted mind he was telling himself that he would some day make Babs regret that she had laughed at his love. What happened that night none of us ever knew. Dr. Kent worked late in his laboratory. He was there when Alan and Babs and the housekeeper went to bed. He had written a note to Alan. It was found on his desk in a corner of the laboratory next morning, addressed in care of the family lawyer to be given Alan in the event his father died. It said very little. Described a tiny fragment of gold quartz rock the size of a walnut, which would be found under the giant microscope in the laboratory, and told Alan to give it to the American Scientific Society to be guarded and watched very carefully. The note was found, but Dr. Kent had vanished. There had been a midnight marauder. The laboratory was on the lower floor of the house. Through one of its open windows, so the police said, an intruder had entered. There was evidence of a struggle, but it must have been short, and neither Babs, Alan, the housekeeper, nor any of the neighbors heard anything amiss. And the fragment of golden quartz was gone. The police investigation came to nothing. Polter was found in New York. He withstood the police questions. There was nothing except suspicion upon which he could be held, and he was finally released. Immediately he disappeared. Neither Alan, Babs, nor I saw Polter again. Dr. Kent had never been heard from to this day, 4 years later when I flew to join the twins in Quebec. And now Alan had told me that Polter was up there. We had never ceased to believe that Dr. Kent was alive, and that Polter was the midnight marauder. And as we grew older, we began to search for Polter. It seemed to us that, now we were older, if we could once get our hands on him, We could drag from him the truth in which the police had failed. The call of a traffic director in mid-Vermont brought me back from these vivid thoughts. My buzzer was clanging. A peremptory halting signal daybeam came darting up at me from below. It caught me and clung. I shouted down at it. "What's the matter?" I gave my name and number and all the details in a breath. Above everything, I had no wish to be halted now. "What's the matter? I haven't done anything wrong." "The hell you haven't!" the director roared. "Come down to 3,000. That lane's barred." I dove obediently, and his beam followed me. "Once more like that, young fellow." But he went busy with somebody else, and I didn't hear the end of his threat. I crossed into Maine in mid-afternoon. Twilight was upon me. The sky was solid lead. The landscape all up through here was gray-white with snow in the gathering darkness. I passed the city of Jackman, crossing full over it to take no chances of annoying the border officials, and a few miles further I dropped to the glaring lights of the International Inspection Field. The formalities were soon finished. I was ready to take away when Alan rushed at me. "George, I thought I could connect here." He gripped me. He was wild-eyed, incoherent. He waved his taxi-plane away. "I'm going back with my friend." "George, I can't. I don't know what's happened to her. She's gone now." "Who's gone? Babs?" "Yes." He pushed me into my plane and climbed in after me. "Don't talk. Get us up. I'll tell you then. I shouldn't have left." When we were up in the air, I swung on him. "What are you talking about? Babs gone?" I could feel myself shuddering with a nameless horror. "I don't know what I'm talking about, George. I'm about crazy. The Quebec police think I am anyway. I've been raising hell with them for an hour. Babs is gone. I can't find her. I don't know where she is." He finally calmed down enough to tell me. Shortly after his radio phone to me in New York, he had missed Babs. They had had lunch in the huge hotel, and then walked on the Dufferin Terrace, the famous promenade outside looking down over the lower city, the great sweep of the St. Lawrence River, and the gray-white distant Laurentian mountains. "I was to meet her inside. I went in ahead of her, but she didn't come. I went back to the terrace, and she was gone. Wasn't in our rooms, nor the lobby, nor anywhere." But it was early afternoon, in the public place of a civilized city, in the daylight of Dufferin Terrace, beside the long ice toboggan slide, under the gaze of skaters on the ice rink and several hundred holiday merrymakers. A young girl could hardly be murdered or forcibly abducted without attracting some attention. The Quebec police thought the young American unduly excited over his sister, who was missing only an hour. They would do what they could if by dark she had not rejoined him. They suggested that doubtless the young lady had gone shopping. "Maybe she did," I agreed, but in my heart I felt differently. "She'll be waiting for us in the hotel when we get there, Alan." "But I'm telling you, we saw Poulter this morning. He lives here, not 30 miles from Quebec. We saw him on the terrace after breakfast. Recognized him at once." "Did he see you?" "I don't know. He was lost in the crowd in a minute. But I asked a young French fellow who it was. He knew him. Told me Frank Rascour. That's the name he wears now. He was a famous man up here, well known, immensely rich. I don't know if he saw us or not. What a fool I was to leave Babs alone, even for a minute." We were speeding over a white-clad valley with a little frozen river winding down its middle. Almost full night had come. The leaden sky was low above us. It began snowing. The lights of the small villages along the river were barely visible. "Can you land us, Alan?" "Yes, surely. Municipal field just beyond the Citadel. We can get to the hotel in 5 minutes. Good landing lights." It was a flight of only half an hour. During it, Alan told me about Poulter. The hunchback, now known as Frank Rascour, owned a mine in the Laurentides, some 30 miles from Quebec City, a fabulously productive mine of gold. It was an anomaly that gold should be produced in this region. No vein of gold-bearing rock had been found except the one on Poulter's property. Alan had seen a newspaper account of the strangeness of it, and just upon the chance had come to Quebec, seen Frank Rascor on the Dufferin Terrace, and recognized him as Poulter. Again my thoughts went back into the past. Had Poulter stolen that missing fragment of golden quartz the size of a walnut which had been beneath Dr. Kent's microscope? We always thought so. Dr. Kent had some secret, some great problem upon which he was working. Poulter, his assistant, had evidently known, or partially known, its details. And now, 4 years later, Poulter was immensely rich, with a gold mine in mountains where there was no other such evidence of gold. I seemed to see some connection. Alan, I knew, was groping with a dim idea, so strange he hardly dared voice it. "I tell you it's weird, George. The sight of him. Poulter. Heavens, one could mistake that hunchback. And his face, his features, just the same as when we knew him." "Then what's weird?" I demanded. "His age." There was a queer, solemn hush in Alan's voice. "George, when we knew Poulter, he was about 25, wasn't he? Well, that was 4 years ago. But he isn't 29 now. I swear it's the same man, but he isn't around 30. Don't ask me what I'm talking about. I don't know. But he isn't 30. He's nearer 50. Unnatural. Weird. I felt it, and so did Babs, just that brief look we had at him." I did not answer. My attention was managing the plane. The lights of Seville were under us. Beyond the city cliffs, the St. Lawrence lay in its deep valley, and the Quebec lights, the light-dotted ramparts with the terrace and the great fortress-like hotel, showed across the river. "Better take the stick, Ellen. I don't know where the field is. And don't you worry about Babs. She'll be back by now." But she was not. We went to the 2 connecting rooms in the tower of the hotel which Alan and Babs had engaged. We inquired with half a dozen phone calls. No one had seen or heard from her. The Quebec police were sending a man up to talk to Alan. "Well, we won't be here," Alan called to me. He was standing by the window in Bab's room. He was trembling too much to use the phone. I hung up the receiver and went through the connecting door to join him. Bab's room. It sent a pang through me. A few of her garments were lying around. A negligee was laid out on the dainty little bed. A velvet boudoir doll, she had always loved them, stood on the dresser. Upon this hotel room, in a day, she had impressed her personality. Her perfume was in the air, and now she was gone. "We won't be here," Alan was repeating. He gripped me at the window. "Look!" In his hand was an ugly-looking, smokeless, soundless automatic of the Essen type. "And I've got another for you. Brought them up with me." His face was white and drawn, but his hands abruptly were steady. The tremble was gone out of his voice. "I'm going after him. George, now. Understand that? Now. His place is only 30 miles from here, out there in the mountains. You can see it in the daylight. A wall around his property, and a stone castle which he built in the middle of it. A gold mine? Hell." There was nothing to be seen now out of the window but the snow-filled darkness, the blurred lights of lower Quebec, and the line of dock lights 500 feet under us. "Will you fly me, George?" "Of course." I was the one trembling now. The cool feel of the automatic which Alan thrust into my hand seemed suddenly to crystallize Bab's danger. I was here in her room, with the scent of her perfume around it, and this deadly weapon was needed. But the trembling was gone in a moment. "Yes, of course, Alan. No use talking to the police. You can't get a search warrant to ransack the castle of a rich man just because you can't find your sister. Come on, you can tell me what this place is like as we go." Bundled in our flying suits, we hurried from the hotel, climbed the citadel slope of the landing field, and in 10 minutes were again in the air. The wind sucked at us. The snow now was falling with thick, huge flakes. Directed by Alan, I headed out over the ice-filled St. Lawrence, past the frozen Isle d'Orleans, toward Poulter's mysterious mountain castle. Suddenly Alan burst out, "I know what Father's secret was, George. I can piece it together now. from the little things that were meaningless when I was a kid. He invented the electron microscope. You know that. The infinitely small fascinated him. I remember he once said that if we could see far enough down into smallness, we would come upon human life. Alan's low, tense voice was more vehement than I had ever heard it before. It's clear to me now, George. That little fragment of golden quartz which he wanted me to be so careful of contained a world with human inhabitants. Father knew it or suspected it, and I think the chemical problem on which he was working aimed for some drug. I know it was a drug they were compounding. Poulter said so once, a radioactive drug. I remember listening at the door. A drug, George, capable of making a human being infinitely small. I did not answer when momentarily Alan paused. So strange a thing. My mind whirled with it, struggled to encompass it, and like the meaningless pieces of a puzzle dropping so easily into place when the key pieces fitted, I saw Poulter stealing that fragment of gold, abducting Dr. Kent, perhaps because Poulter himself was not fully acquainted with the secret. And now Poulter, up here with a fabulously rich gold mine, and Babs, abducted by him to be taken where? It set me shuddering. "Alan, that's what it was," Alan reiterated. "And Poulter, here now with what he calls a mine. It isn't a mine, it's a laboratory. He's got Father, too, hidden God knows where. And now Babs. We've got to get them, George. The police can't help us. It's just you and me to fight this thing. And it's diabolical." Chapter 2. The Girl an Inch Tall. We soared over the divided channel of the St. Lawrence, between Orleans and the mainland. Montmorency Falls in a moment showed dimly white through the murk to our left, a great hanging veil of ice higher than Niagara. Further ahead, the lights of the little village of St. Anne-de-Beaupré were visible with the gray-black towering hills behind them. Historic region. But Alan and I had no thoughts for it. "Swing left, George, over the mainland. That's St. Anne. We passed this side of it. Put the mufflers on. This damn thing roars like a tower siren." I cut in the mufflers and switched off our wing lights. It was illegal, but we were past all thought of that. We were both desperate. The slow, prudent process of acting within the law had nothing to do with this affair. We both knew it. Our little plane was dark, and amid the sounds of this night blizzard our muffled engine could not be heard. Alan touched me. "There are his lights. See them?" We had passed St. Anne. The hills lay ahead, wild mountainous country stretching northward to the foot of Hudson Bay. The blizzard was roaring out of the north, and we were heading into it. I saw, on what seemed a dome-like hill perhaps 1,000 feet above the river level, a small cluster of lights which marked Poulter's property. "Fly over at once, George. Low. We can chance it. And find a place to land outside the walls." We presently had it under us. I held us at 500 feet, and cut our speed to the minimum of 20 miles an hour facing the gale, though it was 60 or 70 when we turned. There were a score or two of hooded ground lights, but there was little reflection aloft, and in the murk of the snowfall I felt we would escape notice. We crossed, turned, and went back in an arc following Poulter's outer curved wall. We had a good view of it. A weird enough looking place, here on its lonely hilltop. No wonder the wealthy Frank Rascor had attained local prominence. The whole property was irregularly circular, perhaps a mile in diameter, covering the almost flat dome of the hilltop. Around it, completely enclosing it, Poulter had built a stone and brick wall, a miniature wall of China. We could see that it was fully 30 feet high, with what evidently were naked high-voltage wires protecting its top. There were half a dozen little gates, securely barred, with doubtless a guard at each of them. Within the wall there were several buildings, a few small stone houses suggesting workmen's dwellings, an oblong stone structure with smoke funnels which seemed perhaps a smelter, a huge dome-like spread of translucent glass over what might have been the top of a mine shaft. It looked more like the dome of an observatory, an inverted bowl fully 100 feet wide and equally as high set upon the ground. What did it cover? And there was Poulter's residence, a castle-like brick and stone building with a central tower, not unlike a miniature of the Chateau Frontenac. We saw a stone corridor on the ground connecting the lower floor of the castle with the dome, which lay about 100 feet to one side. Could we chance landing inside the wall? There was a dark, level expanse of snow where we could have done it, but our descending plane would doubtless have been discovered. But the mile-wide inner area was dark in many places. Spots of light were at the little wall gates. There was a glow all along the top of the wall. Lights were in Poulter's house. They slanted out in yellow shafts to the nearby white ground. But for the rest, the whole place was dark, save a dim glow from under the dome. I shook my head at Alan's suggestion. "We couldn't land inside." We had circled back and were a mile or so off toward the river. "You saw the guards down there, but that low stretch outside the gate on this side." A plan was coming to me. Heaven knows it was desperate enough, but we had no alternative. We would land and accost one of the gate guards, force our way in. Once inside the wall, on foot in the darkness of this blizzard, we could hide. Creep up to that dome. Beyond that, my imagination could not go. We landed in the snow a quarter of a mile from one of the gates. We left the plane and plunged into the darkness. It was a steady upward slope. A packed snowfield was underfoot, firm enough to hold our shoes, with a foot or so of loose soft snow on its top. The falling flakes whirled around us. The darkness was solid. Our helmeted leather-furred flying suits were soon shapeless with a gathering white shroud. We carried our essence in our gloved hands. The night was cold, around 0, I imagine, though with that biting wind it felt far colder. From the gloom a tiny spot of light loomed up. "There it is, Alan. Easy now. Let me go first." The wind tore away my words. We could see the narrow rectangle of bars at the gate, with a glow of light behind them. "Hide your gun, Alan." I gripped him. "Hear me?" "Yes." "Let me go first. I'll do the talking. When he opens the gate, let me handle him. You, if there are 2 of them, you take the other." We emerged from the darkness into the glow of light by the gate. I had the horrible feeling that a shot would greet us. A challenge came, at first in French, then in English. "Stop! What do you want?" "To see Mr. Rascore." We were up to the bars now, shapeless hooded bundles of snow and frost. A man stood in the doorway of a lighted little cubby behind the bars. A black muzzle in his hand was leveled at us. "He sees no one. Who are you?" Alan was pressing at me from behind. I shoved back and took a step forward. I touched the bars. "My name is Fred Davis, newspaperman from Montreal. I must see Mr. Rascore." "You cannot. You may send in your call. The mouthpiece is there, out there to the left. Bare your face. He talks to no one without the face image." The guard had drawn back into his cubby. There was only his extended hand and the muzzle of his weapon left visible. I took a step forward. "I don't want to talk by phone. Won't you open the gate? It's cold out here. We have important business. We'll wait with you." Abruptly, the gate lattice slid aside. Beyond the cubby doorway was the open darkness within the wall. A scuffed path leading inward from the gate showed for a few feet. I walked over the threshold with Alan crowding me. The Essen in my coat pocket was leveled. but from the cubby doorway I saw that the guard was gone. Then I saw him crouching back of a metal shield. His voice rang out, "Stand!" A light struck my face, a little beam from a television sender beside me. It all happened in an instant, so quickly Alan and I had barely time to make a move. I realized my image was now doubtless being presented to Poulter. He would recognize me. I ducked my head, yelling, "Don't do that! You frighten me!" It was too late. The guard had received a signal. I was aware of its buzz. From the shield, a tiny jet of fluid leapt at me. It struck my hood. There was a heavy, sickening sweet smell. It seemed like chloroform. I felt my senses going. The cubby room was turning dark, was roaring. I think I fired at the shield, and Alan leapt aside. I heard the faint hiss of his Essen, and his choked, horrified voice. "George, come back! Run! Don't fall! Don't!" I crumpled, slid into blackness, and it seemed, as I went down, that Alan's inert body was falling on top of me. I recovered consciousness after a nameless interval, a phantasmagoria of wild, drugged dreams. My senses came slowly. At first there were dim, muffled voices and the tread of footsteps. Then I knew that I was lying on the ground, and that I was indoors. It was warm. My overcoat was off. Then I realized that I was bound and gagged. I opened my eyes. Alan was lying inert beside me, roped and with a black gag around his face and in his mouth. We were in a huge, dim, open space. Presently, as my vision cleared, I saw that the dome was overhead. This was a circular, 100-foot-wide room. It was dimly lighted. The figures of men were moving about, their great misshapen shadows shifting with them. 20 feet from me there was a pile of golden rock, chunks of gold the size of a man's fist, or his head and larger, heaped loosely into a mound 10 feet high. Beyond this pile of ore, near the center of the room, 20 feet above the concrete floor, there was a large hanging electrolier. It cast a circular glow downward. Under it I saw a low platform raised a foot or two above the ground. A giant electron-microscope was hung with its 20-foot cylinder above the platform. Its intensification tubes were glowing in a dim phosphorescent row on a nearby bracket. A man sat in a chair on the platform at the microscope's eyepiece. I saw all this with a brief glance. Then my attention went to a white stone slab under the giant lens. It rested on the platform floor, a 2-foot square surface of smooth white stone like marble. A little roped railing a few inches high fenced it, and in its center lay a fragment of golden quartz the size of a walnut. There was a movement across my line of vision. 2 figures advanced. I recognized both of them, and I strained at my bonds, mouthed the gag with a futile, horrified effort. I could no more than writhe, and I could not make a sound. I lay, after a moment, exhausted, and stared with horror. The familiar hunched figure of Poulter advanced toward the microscope, and with him, his huge hand holding her wrists, was Babs. They were nearly 50 feet from me, but with the light over them I could see them clearly. Bab's slim figure was clad in a long skirted dress, pale blue now with the light on it. Her long black hair had fallen disheveled to her shoulders. I could not see her face. She did not cry out. Poulter was half dragging her as she resisted him, and then abruptly she ceased struggling. I heard his guttural voice. "That is better." They mounted to the platform. It seemed to me that they must have been far away. They were very small, abnormally small. I blinked. Horror surged over me. Their figures were dwindling as they stood there. Poulter was saying something to the man at the microscope. Other men were nearby, watching. All normal save Poulter and Babs. A moment passed. Poulter was standing by the chair in which the man at the microscope was sitting, and Poulter's head barely reached its seat. Babs was clinging to him now. Another moment. They were both little figures down by the chair leg. Then they began walking with swaying steps toward the tiny railing of the white slab. The white reflection from the slab plainly illumined them. Poulter's arm was around Babs. I had not realized how small they were until I saw Poulter lift the rope of the 4-inch little fence, and he and Babs stooped and walked under it. The fragment of quartz lay a foot from them in the center of the white surface. They walked unsteadily toward it, but soon they were running. My horrified senses whirled. Then, abruptly, I felt something touch my face. Alan and I were lying in shadow. No one had noticed my writhing movements, and Alan was still in drugged unconsciousness. Something tiny and light and soundless as a butterfly wing brushed my face. I jerked my head aside. On the floor, within 6 inches of my eyes, I saw the tiny figure of a girl an inch high. She stood with a warning gesture to her lips, a human girl in a filmy, flowing drapery. Long, pale golden tresses lay on her white shoulders. Her face, small as my little fingernail, colorful as a miniature painted upon ivory, was so close to my eyes that I could see her expression, warning me not to move. There was a faint glow of light on the floor where she stood, but in a moment she moved out of it. Then I felt her brush against the back of my head. My ear was near the ground. A tiny warm hand touched my earlobe, clung to it. A tiny voice sounded in my ear. "Please, do not move your head. You might kill me." There was a pause. I held myself rigid. Then the tiny voice came again. "I am Glora, a friend. I have the drug. I will help you." Chapter 3. The Fight in the Shrinking Dome Room. It seemed that Alan was stirring. I felt the tiny hand leave my ear. I thought that I could hear faint little footfalls as the girl scampered away, fearful that a sudden movement from Alan would crush her. I turned cautiously after a moment and saw Alan's eyes upon me. He too had seen, with a blurred returning consciousness, the dwindling figures of Babs and Poulter. I followed his gaze. The white slab with the golden quartz under the microscope seemed empty of human movement. The several men in this huge circular dome room were dispersing to their affairs. 3 of them sat whispering by what I saw now was a pile of gold ingots stacked crosswise. But the fellow at the microscope held his place, his eye glued to its aperture as he watched the vanishing figures of Poulter and Babs on the rock fragment. Alan seemed trying to convey something to me. He could only gaze and jerk his head. I saw behind his head the figure of the tiny girl on the floor behind him. She wanted evidently to approach his head, but did not dare. When for an instant he was quiet, she ran forward, but at once scampered back. From the group by the ingots, one of the men rose and came toward us. Alan held still, watching, and the girl, Glora, seized the opportunity to come nearer. We both heard her tiny voice. "Do not move. Close your eyes. Make him think you are still unconscious." Then she was gone, like a mouse hiding in the shadows near us. Amazement swept Alan's face. He twisted, mouthed at his gag. But he saw my eager nod and took his cue from me. I closed my eyes and lay stiff, breathing slowly. Footsteps approached. A man bent over Alan and me. "Are you no conscious yet?" It was the voice of a foreigner, with a queer, indescribable intonation. A foot prodded us. "Wake up." Then the footsteps retreated, and when I dared to look, the man was rejoining his fellows. It was a strange-looking trio. They were heavy-set men in leather jackets and short, wide, knee-length trousers. One wore tight, high boots, and the others a sort of white buskin, with ankle straps. All were bare-headed, round bullet heads of close-clipped black hair. I suddenly had another startling realization. These men were not of normal size, as I had assumed. They were 8 or 10 feet tall at the very least. And they and the pile of ingots, instead of being close to me, were more distant than I had thought. Alan was trying to signal me. The tiny girl was again at his ear, whispering to him. And then she came to me. "I have a knife, see?" She backed away. I caught the pinpoint gleam of what might have been a knife in her hand. "I will get a little larger. I am too small to cut your ropes. You lie still, even after I have cut them." I nodded. The movement frightened her so that she leapt backward, but she came again, smiling. The 3 men were talking earnestly by the ingots. No one else was near us. Glora's tiny voice was louder, so that we both could hear it at once. "When I free you, do not move, or they may see that you are loose. I get larger now, a little larger, and return." She darted away and vanished. Alan and I listening to the voices of the 3 men. 2 were talking in a strange tongue. One called to the man at the microscope, and he responded. The 3rd man said suddenly, "Say, talk English. You know damn well I can't understand that lingo." "We say, McGuire, the 2 prisoners soon wake up. What we ought to do is kill him. Poulter's a fool. The doctor say, wait for him return. Not long, what you call 3-4 hours. And have the Quebec police up here looking for him. And that damn girl he stole off the terrace. What did he call her? Barbara Kint? These 2 who are drugged, their bodies can be thrown in a gully down behind St. Anne. That what doctor planned to do, I think. Then the police find them, days maybe from now, and their smashed airship with them." Gruesome suggestion. The man at the microscope called, "They are gone. Almost. I can hardly see them more." He left the platform and joined the others, and I saw that he was much smaller than they, about my own size possibly. There seemed 6 men here altogether. 4 now by the ingots, and 2 others far across the room, where I saw the dark entrance of the corridor tunnel which led to Poulter's castle. Again I felt a warning hand touch my face, and saw the figure of Glora standing by my head. She was larger now, about a foot tall. She moved past my eyes, stood by my mouth, bent down over my gag. I felt the cautious side of a tiny knife blade inserted under the fabric of the gag. She hacked, tugged at it, and in a moment ripped it through. She stood panting from the effort. My heart was pounding with fear that she would be seen, but the man had turned the central light off when he left the microscope, and it was far darker here now than before. I moistened my dry mouth. My tongue was thick, but I could talk. "Thank you, Glora." "Quiet!" I felt her hacking at the ropes around my wrists, and then at my ankles. It took her a long time, but at last I was free. I rubbed my arms and legs, felt the returning strength in them. And presently Alan was free. "George, what—" he began. "Wait," I whispered. "Easy. Let her tell us what to do." We were unarmed, 2 against these 6, 3 of whom were giants. Clara whispered, "Do not move. I have the drugs, but I can no give them to you when I am still so small. I have not enough. I will hide. There." Her little arm gestured to where, near us, 6 boxes were piled. "When I am large as you, I come back. Be ready, quickly to act. I may be seen. I give you then the drug." "But wait," Alan whispered. "We must know. The drug to make you large. In a moment when you can fight these men. I had planned it for myself to do that, and then I saw you held captive. That girl of your world the doctor just now steal, she is friend of yours?" "Yes, yes, Glora, but—" 1,000 questions were springing in my mind, but this was no time to ask them. I amended, "Go, hurry. Give us the drug when you can." The little figure moved away from us and disappeared. Alan and I lay as we had before, but now we could whisper. We tried to anticipate what would happen, tried to plan, but that was futile. The thing was too strange, too astoundingly fantastic. How long Glora was gone, I do not know. I think not over 3 or 4 minutes. She came from her hiding place, crouching this time, and joined us. She was probably of normal Earth size, a small, frail-looking girl something over 5 feet tall. We saw now that she was about 16 years old. We lay staring at her, amazed at her beauty. Her small oval face was pale, with the flush of pink upon her cheeks. A face queerly, transcendently beautiful. It was wholly human, yet somehow unearthly, as though unmarked by even the heritage of our earthly strifes. "Now I am ready." She was fumbling at her robe. "I will give you each the same." Her gestures were rapid. She flung a quick glance at the distant men. Alan and I were tense. We could easily be discovered now, but we had to chance it. We were sitting erect. He murmured, "But what do we do? What happens? What—" On the palm of her hand were 2 small pink-white pellets. "Take these, one for each of you, quickly." Involuntarily we drew back. The thing abruptly was gruesome, frightening, horribly frightening. "Quickly," she urged. "The drug is what you call highly radioactive, and volatile. Exposed to the air, it is gone very soon. You are afraid? No, no, it will not harm you." With a muttered curse at his own reluctance, Alan seized the pellet. I stopped him. "Wait." The men momentarily were engaged in a low-voiced, earnest discussion. I dared to hesitate a moment longer. "Glora, where will you be?" "Here, right here. I will hide." "We want to go after Mr. Poulter." I gestured. "Into that little piece of golden rock." "Is that where he went? Is that where he took the Earth girl?" "Yes. My world is there, within an atom there in that rock." "Will you take us?" "Yes, yes." Alan whispered suddenly, "Then let us go now. Get smaller now." But she shook her head vehemently. "That is not possible. We would be seen as we climbed the platform and crossed the white slab." "No," I protested. "Not if we get very small hiding here first." She was smiling, but urgently fearful of this delay. "Should we get that small, then it would be from here," she gestured toward the microscope, "to there, a journey of very many miles. Don't you understand?" This thing's so strange. Alan was plucking at me. "Ready, George?" "Yes." I put the pellet on my tongue. It tasted slightly sweet, but seemed quickly melted, and I swallowed it hastily. My head swam. My heart was pounding, but that was apprehension, not the drug. A thrill of heat ran through my veins, as though my blood were on fire. Alan was clinging to me as we sat together. Glora again had vanished. In the background of my whirling consciousness, the sudden thought hovered that she had tricked us, done to us something diabolical. But the thought was swept away in the confusion of the flood of impressions upon me. I turned dizzily. "All right, Alan?" "Yes, I guess so." My ears were roaring, the room seemed whirling, but in a moment that passed. I felt a sudden, growing sense of lightness. A humming was within me, a soundless tingle. To every tiny microscopic cell in my body the drug had gone. The myriad pores of my skin seemed thrilling with activity. I know now it was the exuding volatile gas of this disintegrating drug. Like an aura it enveloped me, acted upon my garments. I learned later much of the principles of this and its companion drug. I had no thought for such things now. The huge, dimly illumined room under the dome was swaying. Then abruptly it steadied. The strange sensations within me were lessening, or I forgot them. And I became aware of externals. The room was shrinking. As I stared, not with horror now, but with amazement and a coming triumph, I saw everywhere a slow, steady, crawling movement. The whole place was dwindling. The platform, the microscope, were nearer than before, and smaller. The pile of ingots, with the men off there, was shifting toward me. George, my God, weird. I saw Alan's white face as I turned to him. He was growing at the same rate as myself, evidently, for of all the scene, he only was unchanged. We could feel the movement. The floor under us was shifting, crawling slowly. From all directions it came, contracting as though it were being squeezed beneath us. In reality, our expanding bodies were pushing outward. The pile of boxes which had been a few feet away were thrusting themselves at me. I moved incautiously and knocked them over. They seemed small now, perhaps half their former size. Glora was standing behind them. I was sitting and she was standing, but across the litter our faces were level. "Stand up," she murmured. "You all right now? I hide." I struggled to my feet, drawing Ellen up with me. Now, the time for action was upon us. We had already been discovered. The men were shouting, clambering to their feet. Ellen and I stood swaying. The dome room had contracted to half its former size. Near us was a little platform, chair and microscope. Small figures of men were rushing at us. I shouted, "Ellen, watch yourself!" We were unarmed. These men might have automatics, but evidently they did not. Knives were in their hands. The whole place was ringing with shouts. And then a shrill siren alarm from outside was clanging. The first of the men, a few moments before he had seemed a giant, flung himself upon me. His head was lower than my shoulders. I met him with a blow of my fist in his face. He toppled backward, but from one side another figure came at me. A knife blade bit into the flesh of my thigh. The pain seemed to fire my brain. A madness descended upon me. It was the madness of abnormality. I saw Alan with two dwarfed figures clinging to him, but he threw them off, and they turned and ran. The man at my thigh stabbed again, but I caught his wrist and, as though he were a child, whirled him around me and flung him away. He landed with a crash against the shrunken pile of gold nuggets and lay still. The place was in a turmoil. Other men were appearing from outside, but they stood now well away from us. Alan backed against me. His laugh rang out, half hysterical with the madness upon him as it was upon me. "God, George, look at them! So small!" They were now hardly the height of our knees. This was now a small circular room under a lowering concave dome. A shot came from the group of pygmy figures. I saw the small stab of flame, heard the sing of the bullet. We rushed, with a full frenzy of madness upon us, enraged giants. What actually happened I cannot recount. I recall scattering the little figures, seizing them, flinging them headlong. A bullet, tiny now, stung the calf of my leg. Little chairs and tables under my feet were crashing. Alan was lunging back and forth, stamping, flinging his tiny adversaries away. There were 20 or 30 of the figures here now. Then I saw some of them escaping. The room was littered with wreckage. I saw that by some miracle of chance the microscope was still standing, and I had a moment of sanity. "Ellen, watch out! The microscope! The platform! Don't smash it! And Glora, look out for her!" I suddenly became aware that my head and a shoulder had struck the dome roof. Why, this was a tiny room. Alan and I found ourselves back together, panting in the small confines of a circular cubby, with an arching dome close over us. At our feet, the platform with the microscope over it hardly reached our boot-tops. There was a sudden silence, broken only by our heavy breathing. The tiny forms of humans strewn around us were all motionless. The others had fled. Then we heard a small voice. "Here, take this, quickly! You are too large! Quickly!" Alan took a step, and then a sudden panic was on us both. Glora was here at our feet. We did not dare turn, hardly dared move. To stoop might have crushed her. My leg hit the top of the microscope cylinder. It rocked, but did not fall. Where was Glora? In the gloom we could not see her. We were in a panic. Alan began, "George, I say—" The contracting inner curve of the dome bumped gently against my head. The panic of confusion which was upon us turned to fear. The room was closing in to crush us. I muttered, "Alan, I'm going out." I braced myself and heaved against the side and top curve of the dome. Its metal ribs and heavy, translucent, reinforced glass plates resisted me. There was an instant when Alan and I were desperately frightened. We were trapped, to be crushed in here by our own horrible growth. Then the dome yielded under our smashing blows. The ribs bent, the plates cracked. We straightened, pushed upward, and emerged through the broken dome, with head and shoulders towering into the outside darkness, and the wind and snow of the blizzard howling around us. Chapter 4. The Journey into Smallness. "Glora, that was horrible." We stood again in normal size, with the wrecked dome laboratory around us. The dome had a great jagged hole halfway up one of its sides, through which the snow was falling. The broken bodies strewn around were gruesome. Alan repeated, "Horrible, Glora. This drug, the power of it, is diabolical." Glora had grown large after us, had given us the companion drug. I need not detail the strange sensations of our dwindling. We were so soon to experience them again. We had searched, when still large, all of Poulter's grounds. Some of his men undoubtedly escaped, made off into the blizzard. How many, we never knew. None of them ever made themselves known again. We were ready to start into the atom. The fragment of golden quartz still lay under the microscope on the white square of stone slab. We had hurried with our last preparations. The room was chilling. We were all inadequately dressed for such cold. I left a note scribbled on a square of paper by the microscope. With daylight, Poulter's wrecked place would be discovered. The police would come. "Guard this piece of golden quartz. Take it at once, very carefully, to the Royal Canadian Scientific Society. Have it watched day and night. We will return." I signed it George Randolph. And as I did so, the extraordinary aspect of these events swept me anew. Here in Poulter's weird place I had seemed living in some strange, fantastic realm. But this was the province of Quebec in civilized Canada. These were the Quebec authorities I was addressing. I flung the thoughts away. "Ready, Glora?" "Yes." Then doubts assailed me. None of Poulter's men had gotten large to fight us. Evidently, he did not trust them with the drug. We could well believe that, for the thing misused was diabolical beyond human conception. A single giant, a criminal, a madman, by the power of giant size alone, could devastate the earth. The drug, lost or carelessly handled, could get loose. Animals, insects eating it, could roam the earth, gigantic monsters. Vegetation, nourished with it, might in a day overrun a great city, bearing it with a jungle growth. How terrible a thing if the realm of smallness were suddenly to emerge! Monsters of the sea, marine organisms, could expand until even the ocean was too small for them. Microbes of disease feeding upon this drug. Alan was gripping me. "We're ready, George." Yes, I'm ready." This was not largeness we were facing now, but smallness. I thought of Babs, down there with Poulter, beyond the vanishing point in the realm of the infinitely small. They had been gone an hour at least. Every moment lost now was adding to Babs' danger. "Yes, I'm ready, Alan." Glora sat with us on the platform. Strange little creature. She was wholly calm now, methodical with her last directions. There had been no time for her to tell us anything about herself. Alan had asked her why she had come here and how she had gotten the drugs. She waved him away. "On the journey down. Plenty of time then." "How long?" Alan demanded. "Not too long. If we are careful with managing the trip, what you might call 10 hours. And now, as we were ready to start, she told us calmly, "I will give you each your share of the drugs, but them you take only as I tell you." She produced from her robe several small vials a few inches long. They were tightly stoppered. The feel of them was cool and sleek. They seemed of some strange polished metal. Some of them were tinted black, while the others glowed opalescent. She gave each of us one vial of each kind. "The light ones are for diminishing," she said. "We take them very carefully, one small pellet only at first." Alan was opening one of his, but she checked him. "Wait. The drug evaporates very quickly. I have more to say first. We sit here together. Then you follow me to the white slab. We climb upon the little rock." She laid her hands on our arms. Her blue eyes regarded us earnestly. Her manner was naive, childlike. But I could not mistake her intelligence. The force of her character stamped on her face for all its dainty, ethereal beauty. "Alan," she smiled at him and tossed back a straying lock of her hair which was annoying her. "You pay attention, Alan. You are very young, reckless. You listen. We must not be separated. You understand that, both of you? We will be always in that little piece of rock, but there will be miles of distance, and to be lost in size. Strange journey upon which now we were starting. Lost in size? You understand me? Lost in size. If that happens, we might never find each other. And if we come upon the Dr. Polter and the girl he holds captive, if we can overtake them—" "We must," I exclaimed. "And we must start, Glora." "Yes, now." She showed us which pellet to select. They were of several sizes, I found. And as she afterward told us, the larger ones were not only larger, but of an intensified strength. We took the smallest. It was barely 1,000th part of the strength of the largest. In unison we placed the pellets on our tongues and hastily swallowed. The first sensations were as before, and, familiar now, they caused no more than a fleeting discomfort. But I think I could never get used to the outward strangeness. The room in a moment was expanding. I could feel the platform floor crawling outward beneath me, so that I had to hitch and change my position as it pulled. We were seated together, Alan and I on each side of Glora. My fingers were on her arm. It did not change size, but it slowly drew away with a space opening between us. Overhead, the dome roof, the great jagged hole there, was receding, lifting, moving upward and away. Glora pulled us to our feet. "We had better start now. The distance is so far, so quickly." We had been sitting within 5 feet of the stone slab with its little 4-inch-high railing around it. A chair was by the microscope eyepiece. As we stood swaying, I saw that the chair was huge, and its seat level with my head. The great barrel cylinder of the microscope slanted 60 feet upward. The dome roof was a distant spread 300 feet up in the dimness. This gigantic room, it was a vast arena now. Alan and I must have hesitated, confused by the expanding scene, a slow, steady movement everywhere. Everything was drawing away from us. Even as we stood together, the creeping platform floor was separating us. A moment passed. Glora was urging vehemently, "Come, you must not stand." We started walking. The railing around the slab was knee-high. The slab itself was a broad, square surface. The fragment of golden quartz lay in its center. It was now a jagged lump nearly a foot in diameter. The platform seemed shifting as we walked. The railing hardly came closer as we advanced toward it. Then suddenly I realized it was receding. 30 feet away? No, now it was more than that. A great thick rope, waist-high, with a huge spread of white surface behind it. "Faster!" urged Glora. We ran and reached the railing. It was higher than our heads. We ran under it and out upon the white slab, a level surface larger now than the whole dome room had been. Glora, like a fawn, ran in advance of us, her draperies flying in the wind. She turned to look back. "Faster, faster, or it will be too hard a climb!" Ahead lay a golden mound of rock. It was widening, raising its top steadily higher. Beyond it and over it was a vast, dim distance. We reached the rock breathless, winded. It was a jagged mound like a great 50-foot butte. We plunged upon it, began climbing. The ascent was steep, precipitous in places. There were little gullies, which expanded as we climbed up them. It seemed that we should never reach the top, but at last we were there. I was aware that the drug had ceased its action. The yellow rocky ground was no longer expanding. We came to the summit and stood to get back our breath. And Alan and I gazed with awe upon the top of a rocky hill. Little buttes and strewn boulders lay everywhere. It was all naked rock, ridged and pitted, and everywhere yellow-tinged. Overhead was distance. I could not call it a sky. A blur was there, something almost but not quite distinguishable. Then I thought that I could make out a more solid blur which might be the lower lens of the microscope above us. And there were blurred, very distant spots of light, like huge suns masked by a haze, and I knew that they were the hooded lights of the laboratory room. Before us, over the brink of a 500-foot cliff, a great glistening white plain stretched into the distance. I seemed to see where it ended in a murky blur. And far higher than our own hilltop level, a horizontal streak marked the rope railing of the slab. "Well," said Alan, "we're here." He gazed behind us, back across the rocky summit, which seemed several 100 feet across to its opposite brink. He was smiling, but the smile faded. "Now what, Glora? Another pellet?" "No, not yet. There is a place where we go down. It is marked in my mind." I had a sudden ominous sense that we three were not alone up here. Glora led us back from the cliff. As we picked our way among the naked crags, it seemed behind each of them an enemy might be lurking. "Glora, do you know if any of Dr. Poulter's men have the drug? I mean, do they come in and out here?" She shook her head. "I think not. He lets no one have the drug. He trusts not anyone. I stole it. I will tell you later. Much I have to tell you before we arrive." Alan made a sudden sidewise leap and dashed around a rock. He came back to us, smiling ruefully. "Gets on your nerves, all this. I had the same idea you did, George. Might be someone around here, but I guess not." He took Laura's hand and they walked in advance of me. "We haven't thanked you yet, Glora." "Not needed. I came for help from your world. I could not get back to my own, and I followed the Dr. Poulter when he came outward. He has made my world, my people, his slaves. I came for help. And because I have helped you needs no thanks." "But we do thank you, Glora." Alan turned his flushed, earnest face back to me. I thought I had never seen him so handsome, with his boyish, rugged features and shock of tousled brown hair. The grimness of adventure was upon him, but in his eyes there was something else. It was not for me to see it. That was for Glora, and I think that even then its presence and its meaning did not escape her. "Stay close, George." "Yes." We reached a little gully near the center of the hilltop. It was some 20 feet deep. Glora paused. "We descend here." The gully was an unmistakable landmark, open at one end, 40 feet long, with the other end terminating in a blind wall, smoothly precipitous. We retraced our steps, entering the gully at its open end, and walked its length. Glora paused by the wall, which now loomed above us. "A pit is here, a hole. I cannot tell just how large it will look when we are in this size." We found and stood over it, a foot-wide circular hole extending downward. Alan abruptly knelt and shoved his hand and arm into it, but Glora sprang at him. "Don't do that!" "Why not? Is this it? How deep is it?" She retorted sharply. "The Dr. Poulter is ahead of us. How far away in size, who knows? Do you want to crush him, and crush that young girl with him?" Alan's jaw dropped. Good Lord! We stood with the little pit before us, and another of the pellets ready. "Now," said Glora. Again we took the drug, a somewhat larger pellet this time. The familiar sensations began. Everywhere the rocks were creeping with a slow, inexorable movement, the landscape expanding around us. The gully walls drew back and upward. In a moment they were precipice cliff walls, and we were in a broad valley. We had been standing close together. We had not moved except to shift our feet as the expanding ground drew them apart. I became aware that Alan and Glora were a distance from me. Glora called, "Come, George, we go down quickly now." We ran to the pit. It had expanded to a great round hole some 6 feet wide and equally as deep. Glora let herself down, peered anxiously beneath her, and dropped. Alan and I followed. We jammed the pit, but as we stood there, the walls were receding and lifting. I had remarked Glora's downward glance, and shuddered. Suppose, in some slightly smaller size, Babs had been here among these rocks. The pit widened steadily. The movement was far swifter now. We stood presently in a great circular valley. It seemed fully a mile in diameter, with huge encircling walls like a crater rim towering thousands of feet into the air. We ran along the base of one expanding wall, following Glora. I noticed now that overhead the turgid murk had turned into the blue of distance. A sky. It was a faintly sky blue, and there seemed a haze in it, almost as though clouds were forming. It had been cold when we started. The exertion had kept us fairly comfortable, but now I realized that the air was far warmer. It was a different air, more humid, and I thought the smell of moist earth was in it. Rocks and boulders were strewn here on the floor of this giant valley, and I saw occasional pools of water. There had been rain recently. A realization came with a shock of surprise. This was a new world. A faint, luminous twilight was around us. And then I noticed that the light was not altogether coming from overhead. It seemed inherent to the rocks themselves. They glowed very faintly luminous, as though phosphorescent. We were now well embarked upon this strange journey. We spoke seldom. Glora was intent upon guiding us. She was trying to make the best possible speed. I realized that it was a case of judgment as well as physical haste. We had dropped into that 6-foot pit. Had we waited a few moments longer, the depth would have been 100 feet, 200, 1,000. It would have involved hours of arduous descent, if we had lingered until we were a trifle smaller. We took other pellets. We traveled perhaps an hour more. There were many instances of Glora's skill. We squeezed into a gully and waited until it widened. We leaped little expanding caverns. We slid down a smooth, yellowish slide of rock like a child's toboggan, and saw it behind and over us, rising to become a great spreading ramp extending upward into the blue of the sky. Now up there, little sailing white clouds were visible, and down where we stood it was deep twilight, queerly silvery with the phosphorescence from the luminous rocks, as though some hidden moon were shining. Strange new world. I suddenly envisaged the full strangeness of it. Around me were spreading miles of barren, naked landscape. I gazed off to where, across the rugged plateau we were traversing, there was a range of hills. Behind and above them were mountains, serrated tiers, higher and more distant. An infinite spread of landscape. And as we dwindled, still other vast reaches opened before us. I gazed overhead. Was it, compared to my stature now, 1,000 miles, perhaps even 1,000,000 miles up to where we had been 2 or 3 hours ago? I think so. Then suddenly I caught the other viewpoint. This was all only an inch of golden quartz, if one were large enough to see it that way. Alan had been trying to memorize the main topographical features of our route. It was not as difficult as it seemed at first. We were always far larger than normal to our environment. The main distinguishing characteristics of the landscape were obvious: the blind gully with the round pit, for instance, or the ramp slide. We had been traveling some 3 or 4 hours when Glora suggested a rest. We were at the side wall of a broad canyon. The wall towered several hundred feet above us, but a few moments before we had jumped down it with a single leap. The drug we had last taken had ceased its action. We sat down to rest. It was a wild, mountainous scene around us, deep with luminous gloom. We could barely see across the canyon to its distant cliff wall. The wall beside us had been smooth, but now it was broken and ridged. There were ravines in it, and dark holes like cave mouths. One was near us. Alan gazed at it apprehensively. "I say, Glora, I don't like sitting here." I had been telling her all we knew of Poulter. She listened quietly, seldom interrupting me. Then she said, "I understand. I tell you now about Poulter as I have seen him." She talked for 5 or 10 minutes. I listened amazed, awed by what she told. But Alan suddenly interrupted her. "I say, let's move away from here. That tunnel mouth or cave, whatever it is." "But we go in there," she protested. "A little tunnel. That is our way to travel. We are not far from my city now." Perhaps Alan felt what a generation ago they called a hunch, a premonition, the presage of evil, which I think comes strangely to us more often than we realize. Whatever it was, we had no time to act upon it. The tunnel mouth which had caused Alan's apprehension was about 100 feet away. It was a 10-foot, black yawning hole in the cliff. Perhaps Alan sensed a movement off there. As I turned to gaze, from the opening came a great hairy human arm, then a shoulder, a head. The giant figure of a man came squeezing through the hole on his hands and knees. He gathered himself, and as he stood erect, I saw that he was growing in size. Already he was 20 feet tall compared to us, a thick-set fellow dressed in leather garments, his legs and bare arms heavily matted with black hair. He stood swaying, gazing around him. I stared up at his round bullet head, his villainous face. He saw us. Stupid amazement struck him, then comprehension. He let out a roar and came at us. Chapter 5. The Message from Poulter. Glora shouted, "Into the tunnel! This way!" She held her wits and darted to one side, with Alan and me after her. We ran through a narrow passage between two 50-foot boulders which lay close together. Momentarily the giant was out of sight, but we could hear his heavy tread and his panting breath. We emerged, had passed him. He was taller now. He seemed confused at our sudden scampering activity. He checked his forward rush and ran around the twin boulders, but we had squeezed into a narrow ravine. He could not follow. He threw a rock. To us it was a boulder. It crashed behind us. To him we were like scampering insects. He could not tell which way we were about to dart. Alan panted, "Glora, does this lead out?" The little ravine seemed to open 50 feet ahead of us. Alan stopped, seized a chunk of rock, flung it up. I saw the giant's face above us. He was kneeling, trying to reach in. The rock hit him in the forehead. A pebble, but it stung him. His face rose away. Again we emerged. The tunnel mouth was near us. We reached it and flung ourselves into its 10-foot width just as the giant came lunging up. He was far larger than before. Looking back, I could see only the lower part of his legs blocked against the outer light. "Gloria, Alan, where are you?" For a moment I did not see them. It was darker in this tunnel, broken rocky walls, a jagged arching roof 10 feet high. Then I heard Alan's voice. "George, here!" They came running to me. For a moment we stood, undecided what to do. My eyes were growing accustomed to the darkness. It was illumined by a dim phosphorescence from the rocks. I saw Alan fumbling for his vials, but Glora stopped him. "No, we are the right size." We were 100 feet back from the opening. The giant's legs disappeared, but in a moment the round light hole of the exit was obscured again. His head and shoulders. He was lying prone. His great arms came in. He hitched forward. The width of his expanding shoulders wedged. I think that he expected to reach us with a single snatch of his tremendous arms. Or perhaps he was confused and forgot his growth. He did not reach us. His shoulders stuck. Then suddenly he was trying to back out, but could not. It was only a moment. We stood in the radiant gloom of the tunnel, clinging to each other, ourselves stricken by confusion. The giant's voice roared, reverberating around us. Anger, a note of fear, finally stark terror. He heaved, but the rocks of the opening held solid. Then there was a crack, a gruesome rattling, splintering, his shoulder bones breaking. His whole gigantic body gave a last convulsive lunge, and he emitted a deafening shrill scream of agony. I was aware of the tunnel mouth breaking upward, falling rocks, an avalanche, a cataclysm around us, the light overhead. The giant's crushed body lay motionless. A pile of boulders, rocks, and loose metallic earth were strewn upon his head and torso, illumined by the outer light through a jagged rent where the cliff face had fallen down. We were unhurt, crouching back from the avalanche. The giant's mangled body was still expanding, shoving at the litter of loose rocks. In a moment it would again be too large for the broken cliff opening. I found my wits. "Alan, out of here! God, don't you see?" But Glora held us. The drug the giant had taken was about at its end, and Glora recognized it. The growth presently stopped. That huge, noisome mass of pulp, which once had been human shoulders. I shoved Glora away. "Don't look." I was shaking. My head was reeling. Alan's face, painted by the phosphorescence, was ghastly. Glora pulled at us. "This way. The tunnel is not too long. We go." But the giant had drugs, and perhaps weapons. "Wait," I urged. "You two wait here. I'll climb over him." I told them why and ran. I can only leave through the imagination that brief exploratory climb. The broken body seemed at least 100 feet long. The mangled shoulders and chest filled the great torn hole in the cliff. I climbed over the litter. Indescribable, horrible scene. A river of warm blood was flowing down the declivity outside. I came back to Glora and Alan. Under my arm was a huge cylinder vial. It was black, the enlarging drug. I set it down. They stared at me in my blood-stained garments. "George, you're—" "His blood, not mine, Alan." I tried to smile. "There's the drug he carried. Evidently, Poulter was only sending him out. Just the one drug." "What'll we do with it?" Alan demanded. "Look at the size of it." "Destroy it," said Glora. "See, that is not difficult." She tugged at the huge stopper and exposed a few of the pellets, to us as large as apples. "The air will soon spoil it." We left it in the tunnel. I had brought a great roll of paper, had found it folded in the giant's belt with the drug cylinder. We unrolled it and hauled its folds to a spread some 10 feet long. It was covered with a scrawled handwriting in pencil, but its giant characters seemed thick blurred strokes of charcoal. We could not read it. We were too close. Alan and Glora held it up against the tunnel wall. From a distance I could make it out. It was a note written in English, signed Poulter, evidently to one of his men. I read it. "The 2 men prisoners. Kill them at once. That is better. It will be too dangerous to wait for my return. Put their bodies with their airplane. Crash it a mile or more from our gate." Full directions for our death followed, and Poulter said he would return by dawn or soon after. It gave me a start. By dawn. We had been traveling 4 or 5 hours. The dawn was up there now. "No," said Glora. She and Alan cast away the paper. "No, the time in here is different. A different time rate. I do not know how much difference. My world speeds faster. Yours is very slow. It is not the dawn up there quite yet." Again my mind strove to encompass these things so strange. A faster time rate prevailed in here? Then our lives were passing more quickly. We were living, experiencing things, compressed into a shorter interval. It was not apparent. There was nothing to which comparison could be made. I recalled Alan's description of Poulter. Not 30 years old, as he should have been, but nearer 50. I could understand that now. A day in here, while our gigantic world outside might only have progressed a few hours. We walked the length of the tunnel. I supposed it was a quarter of a mile to us in this size. It wound through the cliff with a steady downward slope, and suddenly I realized that we had turned downward nearly half the diameter of a circle. We had turned over, or at least it seemed so, but the gravity was the same. I had noticed from the beginning very little change. The realization of this turning brought a mental confusion. I lost all sense of direction. The outer world of Earth was under my feet instead of overhead. Then we went level. I forgot the confusion. This was normality here. We turned upward a little. Cross tunnels intersected ours at intervals. I saw caverns, open, widened tunnels, as though this mountain were honeycombed. "Look," said Glora. "There is the way out. All these passages lead the same way." There was a glow of light ahead. I recall that I was at that moment fumbling at my belt in two small compartments of which I was carrying the 2 vials of the drugs which Glora had given me. Alan wore the same sort of belt. We had found them in the wrecked dome room. I heard a click on the ground at my feet. I was about to stoop to see what I had kicked, only a loose stone perhaps, but Glora's words distracted me. I did not stoop. If only I had, how different events might have been. The glow of light ahead of us widened as we approached, and presently we stood at the end of the tunnel. A spread of open distance was outside. We were on a ledge of a rocky, precipitous wall, some 50 feet above a wide, level landscape. Vegetation. I saw trees, a forest off to the left. A range of naked hills lay behind it. A mile away, in front and to the right, a little town nestled on the shore of shining water. There was starlight on the water, and over it a vast blue-purple sky was studded with stars. I gazed, with that first sudden shock of emotion, into illimitable depths of interplanetary space. Light-years of distance, gigantic worlds, blazing suns off there shrunken by distance now to little points of light. A universe was here. But this was an inch of golden quartz. Above my head were stars which, compared to my bodily size now, were vast worlds 10,000 light-years away. Yet, from the other viewpoint, I had only descended perhaps an eighth or a quarter of an inch beneath the broken pitted surface of a little fragment of golden quartz the size of a walnut, into just one of its myriads of golden atoms. Chapter 6. The Girl in the Golden Cage. "My world," Glora was saying. "You like it? See the starlight on the lake? I have heard that your world looks like this at night in summer. Ours is always like this. No day, no night, just like this, starlight." Her hand went to Alan's shoulder. "You like it, my world?" "Yes, yes, Glora, it's beautiful." There seemed a sheen on everything, a soft, glowing sheen of phosphorescence from the rocks rising to meet the pale, wan starlight. The night air was soft, with a gentle breeze that rippled the distant lake into a great spread of gold and silver light. The city was called Orina. I saw at once that we were about normal size to its houses and people. There were fields beneath our ledge, with farm implements lying in them. No workers, for this was the time for sleep. Ribbons of roads wound over the country, pale streamers in the starlight. Glora gestured. "The giants are on their island. Everyone sleeps now. You see the island off there?" Beyond the city, over the low stone roofs of its flat-topped dwellings, the silver spread of lake showed a green-clad island some 3 miles offshore. The distance made its white stone houses seem small, but as I gazed, I realized that they were large to their environment, all far larger than those of the little town. The island was perhaps a mile in length. Between it and the mainland a boat was coming toward us. It was a dark blob of hull on the shining water, and above it a queerly shaped circular sail was puffed out, like a balloon parachute by the wind. "The giants live there," said Ellen. "You mean Poulter's men?" "And women, yes." "Are there many giants?" "No." "How many?" I put in. "How large are they? In relation to us now, I mean, and to your normal size." I turned to Alan. "Poulter and Babs must be down there now. They must have arrived only recently. But we must determine what size to be before we go any further. We can't be gigantic. If he sees us, if we assailed him, well, he'd kill Babs." "We've got to plan. Glora, tell us." "You ask so many questions so fast, George. There are 200 or more of the giants, and there are more than that many thousands of our people here. Slaves, because the giants are 4 times as large. This little city, these fields, these hills of stone and metal, all this was ours to have in peace and happiness, until your Poulter came. And that starlight on the water—" She gestured. "Everywhere is a great reach of desert and forests. Insects, but there are no wild beasts, nothing to harm us. Nature is kind here. The weather is always like this. We were happy, until Poulter came." "And only a few thousand people," Alan said. "No other cities?" "What lies off in the great distance we do not know. Our nation is 10 times what is here. A few other cities, though some of our people live in the forests." She broke off. "That boat is coming for Poulter. He is in the city. No doubt of that. The boat will take him and that girl you call Babs to the Giant's Island. His castle is there." If we could get on that boat and go with him to the island— But in what size? Very small? But then, if we were very small, it would take us hours to get from here to the boat. Glora pointed out where it would land, just beyond the village where the houses were set in a sparse fringe. It would be there, apparently, in 10 or 15 minutes. Poulter was probably there now with Babs, waiting for it. In our present size, we could not get there in time. It was 2 or 3 miles at least. But a trifle larger, the size of one of Poulter's giants, would enable us to make it. We would be seen, but in the pale starlight, keeping away from the city as much as possible, we might only be mistaken for Poulter's people. And when we got closer, we could diminish our size, creep into the boat, get near Babs and Poulter, and then plan what to do. Futile plans. All of life is so futile, so windswept upon the tossing sea of chance. We climbed down from the ledge and stood at the base of the towering cliff, which reared its jagged wall against the stars. A field and a road were near us. The road seemed of normal size. A man was across the field. He did not seem to notice us. He was apparently about my height. He presently discarded his work, went away from us, and vanished. "Hurry, Glora." Alan and I stood beside her while she took pellets from her vials. It needed a careful adjustment. We wanted our stature now to be 4 times what it was. Glora gave us pellets of both drugs, one of which was slightly more intense than the other. "Poulter made them this way," she said. "The 2 at once gives just the growth to take us from this normal size to the stature of the giants." Alan and I did not touch our own vials. We had used none of our enlarging drug upon the journey. The supply she had given us of the other was nearly gone. As I took these pellets, which Glora now gave us, standing there by the side of that road, I recall that I was struck with the realization that never once upon this journey had I conceived myself to be other than normal stature. I am normally about 6 feet tall. I still felt, there in that golden atom, the same height. The landscape seemed of normal size. There were trees nearby, spreading, fantastic-looking growths with great strings of pods hanging from them. But still, as I looked up to see one arching over me with its blue-brown leaves and an air vine carrying vivid yellow blossoms, whatever size of the tree, my consciousness could only conceive myself as of a normal 6-foot stature standing beneath it. The human ego always is supreme. Around each man's consciousness of himself the entire universe revolves. We crouched on the ground when this growth now began, It would not do to be observed changing size. Poulter's giants never did that. Years before, he had made them large, his few hundred men and women. They were, Glora said, people both of this realm and from our great world above. Dissolute, criminal characters who now had set themselves up here as the nucleus of a ruling race. In a moment now we were the size of these giants, 20 to 25 feet tall in relation to this environment. But I did not feel so. As I stood up, still myself in normal stature, I saw around me a shrunken little landscape. The trees, as though in a Japanese garden, were about my own height. The road was a smooth, level path. The little field near us a toy fence around it. In another road across it, the man was walking. In height, he would barely have reached my knees. He saw us rise beside the trees. He darted off his road in alarm and disappeared. I have taken longer to tell all this than the actual time which passed. We could see the boat coming from the island, and it was still a fair distance offshore. We ran along the road, skirting the edge of the little town. Its houses were none of them taller than ourselves. The windows and doorways were ovals into which we could only have inserted a head or an arm. They were most of them dark. Little people occasionally stared out, saw us run past, and ducked back, thankful that we did not stop to harass them. "This way," said Glora. She ran like a fawn, hardly winded, with Alan and me heavily panting behind her. "There are trees, thick trees, quite near where the boat lands. We can get in them and hide and change our size to smallness. But hurry, for we will need so much time when we are small." The little spread of town and the shining lake remained always to our right. In 5 minutes we were past most of the houses. A patch of woods, with thick, interlacing treetops about our own height, lay ahead. It extended a few hundred feet over to the lake shore. The sailboat was heading in close. There was a broad, starlit roadway at the edge of the lake, and a dock there at which the boat was preparing to land. Would we be in time? I suddenly feared not. To get small now, with the distance lengthening between us and the boat, would be disastrous. And where was Poulter? Abruptly we saw him. There had been only little people visible to us, none of our own height. The lake roadway by the dock was brightly starlit. As we approached the intervening patch of woods, it seemed that a crowd of little people were near the dock. Poulter must have been sitting, but now he rose up. We could not mistake his hunched, thick figure, the lump on his shoulders clear in the starlight with the gleaming lake as a background. The crowd of little figures were milling around his knees. In the silence of the night, the murmur of their voices floated over to us. "There he is!" Alan gasped. We all three checked our running. We were at the edge of the patch of woods. "By God, there he is! Let's get larger! Rush him! Why, that's only a few hundred feet over there!" But Babs? Where was Babs? "Alan, down!" I crouched, pulling Alan and Glora with me. "Don't let him see us. He'd know at once. And where is Babs? Can't rush him, Alan. He'd see us coming. Kill her." Of all the strange events which had been flung at us, I think this sudden crisis now most confused Alan and me. To get larger or smaller? Which? Yet something must be done at once. Glora said, "We can get through the woods best in this size, and not be seen, get closer to the landing." We crouched so that the little treetops were always well over us. The patch of woods was dark. A soil of black loam was under us. A thick, soft underbrush reached our knees, and lacy, flexible leaves and branches were at our shoulder height. We pushed them aside, forcing our way softly forward. It was not far. The little murmuring voices of the crowd grew louder. Presently we were crouching at the other edge of the woods. I softly shoved the tree branches aside until we could all three get a clear view of the strange scene now directly before us. And I saw a toy dock, at which a 20-foot, barge-like open sailboat was landing. A narrow, starlit roadway, crowded with a milling throng of people, all no more than 1.5 feet in height. The crowd milled almost to where we were crouching, unseen in the shrubbery. Across the road by the dock, Poulter stood with the crowd down around his knees. In height, he seemed the old familiar Poulter, bareheaded, with his shaggy black hair shot with white. He was dressed in Earth fashion, narrow black evening trousers and a white shirt and collar with flowing black tie. I saw at once what Alan had noticed, the change in him, an abnormality of age. I would have called him now 40 or older. Beyond even that there was an abnormality. A man old before his time, or younger than he should have been for the years he had lived. An indescribable mingling of something. The mingling of the two worlds, perhaps. It marked him with a look at once unnatural and sinister. These were instant impressions. Glora was plucking at me. "On the white chest of his shirt, something is there." Poulter was coatless, with snowy white shirt and cuffs to his thick wrists. He was no more than 50 feet from us. On his shirt bosom, something golden in color was hanging like a large bauble, an ornament, an insignia. It was strapped tightly there with a band about his chest, a cord like a necklace chain up to his thick hunched neck, and other chains down to his belt. I stared at it. An ornament, like a cube, held flat against his shirt front. A little golden cube, ornate with tiny bars. I heard Alan murmuring, "A cage. Why, George, it's—" And then, simultaneously, realization struck me. It was a golden cage strapped there, and I seemed to see that there was something in it. A tiny figure. Babs. "I think he has her there," Glora murmured. "You see the little box with bars? The girl Babs, a prisoner in there." She spoke swiftly, vehemently. "He would take the boat to the island." She suddenly gripped us. "You think really it best to go? I do what you say. I had the wish to get to my father with these drugs." "No," exclaimed Alan. "We must keep close to Poulter." We were ready with our pellets, but a sudden activity in the road made us pause. The crowd of little people were hostile to Poulter, a sullen hostility. They milled about him as he stood there, gazing down at them sardonically. And abruptly he shouted at them in English. "You speak my language, some of you. Then listen." The crowd fell silent. "Listen. This is your future queen. Can you see her? She is small now, but she has the magic power. Soon she will be large, like me." The crowd was shouting again. It surged forward, but it lacked a leader, and those in advance shoved backward in fear. Poulter spoke again. "This girl from my world, you will like her. She is kind and very beautiful. When she is large, you will see how beautiful." A little stone suddenly came up from the throng of little people and struck Poulter on the shoulder. Then another. The crowd, emboldened, made a rush, surged against his legs. He shouted, "You do that? How dare you? I show to you what giants do when you make them angry." From down by his knees he plucked the small figure of a man. The crowd scattered with shouts of terror. Poulter had the struggling 18-inch figure by the wrist. He whirled it around his head like a ninepin and flung it over the canopy of the dock, far out into the shimmering lake. Chapter 7. Within the Golden Cage. The trees around us expanded to towering forest giants. The underbrush rose up over our heads. We had taken only a taste of the diminishing drug. Glora showed us how to touch it to our tongues several times, to adjust our size as we became smaller. It was no more than a minute of diminishing. We could hear the roar of the crowd and Poulter's voice shouting. We ran forward through the great forest. It was a fair distance out to the starlit road. We saw it as a wide, shining esplanade. The people now were giants twice our height. Poulter, himself towering with a seeming 50-foot stature, was standing by the gigantic canopy of the dock. He had dispersed the crowd. There was an open space on the esplanade, a run for us of about 100 feet. "We've got to chance it," I murmured. "Make a run of it, now." We darted across. In the confusion, with all eyes centered on Poulter, we escaped discovery. It was dim under the dock canopy. Poulter had backed from the road and was walking to the barge. It lay like the length of an ocean liner, its sail looming an enormous spread above it. The gunwale was level with the dock floor. A dozen or more 50-foot men were greeting Poulter. They were amidships. I realize now that in those moments as we scurried aboard like wharf rats, we took wild chances. We made for the stern, which momentarily was unoccupied. To Poulter and his men, we were 8 or 9 inches tall. We dropped over the gunwale, slid down the convex 30 or 40-foot incline of the interior, and landed on the bottom of the boat. There were many places where we could safely hide. A litter of gigantic rope strands was around us. We could see the bottom of a crossbench looming overhead, and the great curving sides of the vessel with the gunwales outlined against the starlight. The boat left the dock in a moment. The sail bellied out enormous over us. 10 feet forward from us, the towering figure of a man sat on a bench with the steering mechanism before him. Further on, the other men were dispersed, with 1 or 2 in the distant bow. Poulter reclined on a cushioned couch amidships. Looking along the dark, widely level bottom of the boat, there were only the feet and legs of the men visible. Alan whispered, "Let's get closer." We were insects soundlessly scuttling unnoticed in the dimness. And it was noisy down here, the clank of the steering mechanism, the swish and surge of the water against the hull, the voices of the men. We passed the boots of the seated helmsman, and found another hiding place nearer Poulter. We could see his giant length plainly. None of the other men were near him. He was reclining on an elbow, stretched at ease on the cushion. And at the moment he was fumbling with the chains that fastened the little golden cage to his chest. The cage was double its former size to us now. A shaft of pale light came down, reflected from the great sail surface overhead. It struck the bars of the cage. We could see a small figure in there. Babs. Then we heard Poulter's voice. "I will let you out, Babs. You will come out, sit on my hand, and talk to me. That will be nice. We will have a little time." He unfastened the cage and put it on the cushion beside him. He was still propped up on one elbow. "I will let you out now. Be careful, Babs." My heart was almost smothering me. "Alan, we've got to get still closer. Try something. Get large, shall we?" Alan whispered tensely, "I don't know. Oh, I don't know what to do. This thing—" This thing was so strange. "We can get closer," Glora whispered, "but never larger, not here. They would discover us too soon." We crept forward. We reached the edge of the cushion. Its top surface was a trifle lower than our heads, a billowing, wrinkled mass of fabric. But I saw that the folds of it were rough enough to afford a foothold. I thought that I could climb it. We stood erect. There was a deep shadow along here, but it was brighter on the cushion top. We could see over its edge, an undulating spread of surface with the giant length of Poulter stretched there. The cage was nearer to us. Poulter's great fingers fumbled with it. A door in the lattice bars flipped open. "Careful, my Babs." His voice was a throaty, rumbling roar from above us. "Careful. I do not want you to be hurt." From the little doorway came the figure of Babs. The starlight glowed on her long blue dress. Her black hair was tumbling over her shoulders. Her face was pale, but she was unhurt. Babs. I think that I had never loved her so much as at that moment, nor ever seen her so beautiful as in that miniature, standing at the door of her golden cage, bravely facing the monstrous, misshapen figure of her captor. We heard her small voice. "What do you want me to do?" "Stand quiet. Now I put my hand for you." His monstrous hand bristled with a thatch of heavy black hair. He brought it carefully sliding along the cushion. Babs was barely the length of one of its finger joints. She climbed upon its palm. "That is right, Babs. Now I bring you. Hold tight to my finger. Here, I crook the little one. Fling your arms around it." With a swoop, his hand took her aloft and away. Then we saw her, 20 feet or so in the air, still on his hand as he held it near his face. "Now we have a little talk, Babs. When we get to the island, I put you back in your cage." I had a sudden flash of realization. Something I could do. I did not plan it. I know now my judgment was bad. I recall it struck me that Alan would want to do it also, and perhaps even Glora. That would not work. My chances, however desperate, were better alone, and Glora and Alan, in our present size, could doubtless disembark safely. Glora knew the layout of the island. She could follow Poulter. Alan and Glora were standing beside me, peering over that billowing cushion spread toward the distant giant palm with Babs standing upon it. I gripped Alan's shoulder. "See here, Alan," I whispered vehemently. "Whatever happens, we must follow Poulter. Glora knows the way. Some chance will come. What we want is an opportunity to get large without discovery. Then rush Poulter." Alan's white face turned to me. "Yes, that's what we're planning. But George, here on this boat—" "Of course. Can't do it here. Tell Glora, be sure and follow Poulter. Whatever happens, you think of nothing else. You won't, will you?" "George, what—" "We've got to make some opportunity." I was trembling inside, fearful that Alan would be suspicious of me. Yet I had to make sure that he and Glora would stay as close to Poulter as possible. "Yes," Alan agreed. "Listen to them." Poulter was talking to Babs, but I did not hear the words. I moved a trifle away. Rash decision. I hardly decided anything. There was only the vision of Babs before me, my love for her, and my desperate need of doing something, getting to her, seeing her, being with her, having her near my own size again, as though blessed normality of that would rationalize and lessen her danger. If only I had been less rash. If only back there in that tunnel I had stopped to see what it was my foot kicked against. I slid away. Alan and Glora did not notice. They were whispering together and gazing over the cushion at Babs. In the floor shadow I moved some 10 feet. On the undulating top of the cushion the little golden cage stood with its lattice door open. It was only a few feet from my face. I fumbled at my belt for the diminishing vial. I found 1 pellet left. Well, that would be enough. I was hurried. Alan might discover me. Poulter might move, put Babs in the cage and close its door. We might be near the island already, and the confusion, the activity of disembarking would defeat me. 1,000 things might happen. I touched the pellet to my tongue. In a few seconds the drug action had come and passed. The cushion top loomed well over my head. The side was a ridged, indescribably unnatural vista of cliff wall. The fabric was coarse with hairy strands, dented into little ravines and crevices. I climbed. I came panting to the pillow surface. The golden cage was 6 or 8 feet away and was now 2 feet high. Again I touched the drug to my tongue, held it an instant. The cage drew away, grew to a normal 6-foot height, then larger until in a moment it stopped. I stood peering at it, trying to gauge its size in relation to me. I wanted so intensely now to be normal to Babs. The cage seemed about 10 feet high, a little less probably. I barely tasted the pellet and replaced it carefully in the vial. I could only hope its efficacy would be preserved. I had to chance that I would not be seen now crossing this billowy expanse. I ran. The rope strands of the fabric now had spaces between their curving surfaces. The cage was a shining golden house, set on this wide, rolling area. Far in the distance there was a blur, Poulter's reclining body. I reached the cage. It was a room about 10 feet square and equally as high. Walled solid, top and bottom, and on 3 sides. The front was a lattice of bars, with a narrow 6-foot-high doorway standing open now. I dashed in. The interior was not wholly bare. There was a metal-wrought couch fastened to the wall, with a railing around it and handles. It suggested a ship's bunk. There was a railing at convenient height all around the wall. I sought a hiding place. I saw just one, under the couch. It was secluded enough. There was a grill-like lattice extending down from the seat to the floor. I squeezed under one end and lay wedged behind the grill. How much time passed, I do not know. My thoughts were racing. Babs would be coming. I heard the distant approaching rumble of Poulter's voice. Through the grill I could see across the floor of the 10-foot cage to the front lattice bars. Outside, there appeared a huge, pink-white mottled blob, Poulter's hand, a ridged and pitted surface with great bristling black stalks of hair. The figure of Babs came through the cage doorway. Blessed normality. The same slim little Babs who always stood, since we were both matured, with her head about level with my shoulders. The lattice door swung shut with a reverberating metallic clank. Babs stood tense, clinging to the wall railing. I heard the blurred rumble of Poulter's voice. "Hold tightly, my little Babs." The room lurched, went upward and sidewise with a wild, dizzying swoop. Babs clung, and I was wedged prone under the couch. Then the movement stopped. There was a jolting, rocking, and outside I heard the clank of metal. Poulter was fastening the chains of the cage to his chest. A white reflected glow now came through the bars. It was starlight reflected from Poulter's shirt bosom. An abyss of distance was outside. I could see nothing but the white glow. Momentarily, there was very little movement to the room. Only the rhythmic sway of Poulter's breathing and an occasional jolt as he shifted position. The floor was tilted at a sharp angle. Babs came toward the couch, pulling herself along the wall railing. I called softly, "Babs! Babs, dear!" She stopped. I called again, "Babs!" "Don't cry out. It's George. Here. Stand still." She gave a little cry. "George, where are you? I don't—" I slid out from my concealment and stood up, holding to the railing. "Babs, dear." The blessed normality of sighs. She cried again, "George, you! George, dear!" She edged along the railing, a step or two down the tilting floor, then released her hold and flung herself into my waiting arms. "I think we are landing. Hold the railing, George. When the room moves, it goes with a rush." Babs laughed softly. It must have seemed to her, after being alone in here, that now our plight was far less desperate. She had told me how she was captured. A man accosted her on the terrace, saying he wanted to speak to her about Alan. Then a weapon threatened her. Amid all those people, she was held up in old-fashioned style, hurried to a taxi-car, and whirled away. She was saying now, "When Poulter moves, it is dizzying. You'll see." I have already, Babs. Heavens, that swoop! The room was more level now. We carefully drew ourselves to the front lattice. Poulter was standing, and we had the white sheen from his shirt front. A sheer drop was outside the bars, but looking down I could see the outlines of his body with the huge spread of the boat interior underneath us. A confusion of rumbling voices sounded. Blurred giant shapes were outside. The room jolted and swayed as the boat landed and Poulter disembarked. Babs stood clinging to me. Blessed normality of size. We at least were normal, this metal-barred room, Babs and I. But outside was the abnormality of largeness. I think that in relation to us, the men were of over 200-foot stature, and the hunched Poulter a trifle less. It seemed as he walked that we were lurching at least 150 feet above the ground. "You had better hide," Babs urged. "He might stop and speak to someone. If anyone peered in here, you would be seen. No chance, then, even to get across the room." It was true, but for a few moments I lingered, though I could distinguish vegetation on their flat rooftops, as though flower gardens were laid there. We passed a house with its 100-foot oval windows all aglow with light. Music floated out, a distant blare of musical sounds, and the ribald laughter of giant voices. I had seen no women among these giants of the islands, but now a huge face was at one of the ovals, a dissolute, painted woman of Earth, staring out at Poulter as he passed. It was like the enormous close-up image on a large motion picture screen. She shouted a ribald jest as he went by. "George, please go back. Suppose she had seen you." We ascended a hill. A distance ahead a great oblong building loomed like a giant's palace, which indeed it was. We headed for it, passed through a vast arching doorway into the greater dimness of an echoing interior. I scurried back across the lurching room and again wedged myself under the couch. Babs stood at the lattice 10 feet away. We dared to talk in low tones. The rumbling voices and footsteps outside would make our tiny voices inaudible to Poulter. I was tense with my plans. I had told them to Babs. With the one partially used remaining pellet of the diminishing drug, we could make ourselves small enough to walk out through the bars. Then my black vial of the enlarging chemicals, as yet unused, would take us up, out to our own world. We could not use the drugs now, but the chance might come when Poulter would set the cage on the ground, or somewhere so that we might climb down from it with a chance to hide and get large before we were discovered. I would fight our way upward. All I needed was a fair start in size. But I lay now with doubts assailing me. This was the first moment I had had for calm thoughts, though in truth they were far from calm. Where were Ellen and Glora? Following us now? I could only hope so. Once out of this, Babs and I would have to rejoin them. But how? A panic swept me. I should not have left them. Or at least, I should have told them what I was trying and given Ellen a chance to plan. The panic grew upon me, the premonition of disaster. From my belt I took the opalescent vial with its one partly used pellet. I dumped the pellet out. It was spoiling. The former exposure of the air, the moisture of my tongue, had ruined it. I had no need to guess at the catastrophe. As I held its crumbling, deliquescing fragments on my palm, it melted into vapor and was gone. We could not make ourselves smaller. We would have to wait now until Poulter opened the cage. But once outside, the enlarging drug would give us our chance to fight our way upward. My trembling fingers sought the black vial at my belt. It was not there. My mind flung back. In that tunnel, something had dropped and I had kicked it. Accursed chance! My accursed, heedless stupidity! I had lost the black vial. We were helpless, caged, marooned here in a size microscopic. Chapter 8. From a Drop of Water. I lay concealed, and Babs stood at the lattice of our cage room. I was aware that Poulter had entered some vast apartment of this giant palace. A brighter light was outside. I heard voices, Poulter's and another man's. I could see the distant monster shape of one. He was at first so far away that all his outline was visible. A seated man in a huge white room. I thought there were great shelves with enormous bottles. The spread of tabletops passed under our cage as Poulter walked by them. They held a litter of apparatus, and there was the smell of chemicals in the air. It seemed that this was a laboratory. The man stood up to greet Poulter. I had a glimpse of his head and shoulders level with us. He wore a white linen coat, open, soft collar, and a black tie. He seemed an old man, queerly old, with snow-white hair. I had an instant of whirling, confused impressions. Something was familiar about his face. It was seamed and wrinkled with lines of age and care. There were gentle blue eyes. Then all I could see was the vast spread of his white shirt and coat, a black splotch of his tie outside our bars as Poulter faced him. Babs gave a low cry. Why, dear God!" And then I knew, and Poulter's words were not needed, though I heard their rumble. "I am back again, Kent. Are you still rebellious? You have still determined to compound no more of our drugs? You would rather I killed you? Then see what I have here. This little cage, someone—" It was Dr. Kent, a prisoner here all these years. Babs turned her white face toward me. "George, it's Father. He's alive. Here." "Quiet, Babs. Don't let them know I'm here, remember?" The old man recognized her. "Babs." It was an agonized cry. The blur of him was gone as he sank down into his chair. Poulter continued standing. I could envisage his sardonic grin. Babs was calling, "Father, dear! Father!" From over us came Poulter's rumble. "She is glad to see you, Kent. I have her here, safe. You always knew I would never be satisfied until I had my little Babs. Well, now I have her. Can you hear me?" A sudden desperate calmness fell on Babs. She called evenly, "Yes, I hear you. Father, do not anger him. Do not rebel. Do what he commands. Dr. Poulter, will you let me be with my father? After all these years, let me be with him, just for a little while. In his size, normal." "Ha! My Babs is scheming." "No, I want to talk to him after so long. These years when I thought he was dead." "Scheming! You think, my little Babs, that he has the drugs? I am not so much a fool. He makes them. He can do that, and the last secret reactions only he can perform. He is stubborn. Never would he tell me that one reaction. But he makes no drugs complete, only when I am here." "No, Dr. Poulter, I want only to be with him." The old man's broken voice floated up to us. "You will not harm her, Poulter?" "No, fear nothing. But you no longer rebel?" "I will do what you tell me." The tones carried hopeless resignation, years of being beaten down, rebelling, but now this last blow vanquished him. Then he spoke again, with a sudden strange fire. "Even for the life of my daughter, I will not make your drugs, Poulter, if you mean to harm our Earth." The golden cage room swooped as Poulter sat down. "Ha! Now we bargain. What do you care what I do to your world? You never will see it again. I can lie to you. My plans—" "I do care." "Well, I will tell you, Kent. I am good-natured now. Why should I not be, with my dear little Babs? I tell you, I am done with the Earth world. It is so much nicer here. My friends, they have a good time always. We like this little atom realm. I am going out once more. I must hide the little piece of golden quartz so no harm will come to it." Poulter was evidently in a high good humor. His voice fell to an intimate tone of comradeship, but still I could not mistake the irony of it. "You listen to me, Kent. There was a time, years ago, when we were good friends. You liked your young assistant, the hunchback Poulter. Is it not so? Then why should we quarrel now? I am giving up the Earth world. I wanted of it only the little Babs. You look at me so strange. You do not speak." "There is nothing to say," retorted Dr. Kent wearily. "Then you listen. I have much gold above in Quebec. You know that. So very simple to take it out of our atom, grow large with it, to what we call up there the size of 100 feet. I have a place, a room, secluded from prying eyes under a dome roof. I become very tall, holding a piece of gold. It is large when I am 100 feet tall. So I have collected much gold. They think I own a mine. I have a smelter, and my gold quartz I make into ingots, refined to the standard purity. So simple, and I am a rich man. But gold does not bring happiness, my friend Kent." He chuckled ironically at his use of the platitude. "There is more in life than the ownership of gold. You ask my plans. I have Babs now. I am giving up our Earth world. The mysterious man they know as Frank Rascor will vanish. I will hide our little fragment of quartz. No one up there will even try to find it. Then I come down here with Babs, and we'll have so nice a little government and rule this world. No more of the drugs then will be needed, Kent. When you die, let the secret die with you." Again Poulter's voice turned ingratiating, even more so than before. "We will be friends, Kent. Our little Babs will love me. Why should she not? You will tell her, advise her, and we will all three be very happy." Dr. Kent said abruptly, "Then leave her with me now. That was her request a moment ago. If you expect to treat her kindly, then why not?" I do, but not now. I cannot spare her now. I am very busy, but I must take her with me." Babs had been silent, clinging to the bars of our cage. She called, "Why? I ask you to put this cage down." "Not now, little bird." "And let me be with my father." It struck a pang through me. Babs was scheming, but not the way Poulter thought. She wanted the cage put on the floor, herself out, and a chance for me to escape. I had not yet told her of my miserable stupidity in losing the vial. Poulter was repeating, "No, little bird. Presently, not now. I may take you out with me, my last trip out. I want to talk with you in a normal size when I have time." Our room swooped as he stood up. "You think over what I have said, Kent. You get ready now to make the fresh drugs I will need to bring down all my men from the outer world. They will all be glad to come, or if not, well, we can easily kill those who refuse. You make the drugs. I need plenty. Will you?" "Yes, that is good. I come back soon and give you the catalyst for that last reaction. Will you be ready?" "Yes." The blur outside our bar swung with a dizzying whirl as Poulter turned and left the room, locking its door after him with a reverberating clank. Left alone in his laboratory, Dr. Kent began his preparations for making a fresh supply of the drugs. This room, with two smaller ones adjoining, was at once his workshop and his prison. He stood at its shelves, selecting the basic chemicals. He could not complete the final compounds. The catalyst which was necessary to the final reaction would be brought to him by Poulter. How long he worked there with his thoughts in a whirl at seeing Babs, he did not know. His movements were automatic. He had done all this so many times before. His mind was confused, and he was trembling from head to foot, an old, queerly, unnaturally old man now, unnerved. His shaking fingers could hardly hold the test tubes. His thoughts were flying. Babs was here, come down from the world above. It was disaster, the thing he had feared all these years. He suddenly heard a voice. "Father!" And again, "Father!" A tiny voice down by his shoe-tops. Two small figures were there on the floor beside him. They were both panting, winded by running. They were enlarging. They had come from a smaller size. It was Alan and Glora, who had followed Poulter from the boat, diminished again, and came running through the tiny crack under the metal doorway of the laboratory. They grew to a foot in size, down by Dr. Kent's legs. He was too unnerved. He sat in a chair while Alan swiftly told him what had happened. Babs was in the golden cage. Dr. Kent knew that, but none of them knew what had happened to me. "We must make you small, Father. We have the drugs here with us." "Yes, yes, Alan. How much have you? Show me. Oh, my boy, that you are here, and Babs. Don't you worry. We'll get away from him." Glora and Alan had almost reached Dr. Kent's size before their excited fingers could get out the vials. They took some of the diminishing drug to check their growth. Alan handed his father a black vial. "Yes, lad. No, wait, Father. That's the wrong drug. This other." Dr. Kent had opened the vial. His trembling hand spilled some of the pellets, but none of them noticed it. "Father, dear, this one." Alan held an opalescent vial. "This one." Glora said abruptly, "Listen, is that someone coming?" They thought they heard approaching footsteps. A moment passed, but no one came into the room. "Hurry," urged Glora. "It is nothing. We wait too long." "My boy, Alan, dear, after all these years." They were about to take the diminishing drug. From across the room there came a very queer sound, a scuttling, scratching, and the drone of wings. "Father! Good God, look!" Over by the wall a giant fly was running across the floor. It was growing larger. At Dr. Kent's feet the pellets he had dropped were crushed by his footsteps and strewn on the floor. A fly had eaten of the Swedish powder. The enlarging drug was loose. A few drops of water lay mingled with the drug on the floor, and from the water nameless hideous things were rising. Chapter 9. The Doomed Realm. To Alan, the first few moments that followed the escape of the drug were the most horrible of his life. The discovery struck old Dr. Kent, Glora, and Alan into a numb, blank confusion. They stood transfixed, staring with cold terror. The fly was scurrying along the floor close against the wall. Already it was as large as Alan's hand. It ran into the corner, hit the wall in its confused alarm, and turned back. Its wings were droning with an audible hum. It reared itself on its hairy legs, lifted and sailed across the room. As though drawn by a magnet, Alan turned to watch it. It landed on the wall. Alan was aware of Dr. Kent's rushing with trembling steps to a shelf where bottles stood. Glora was stricken into immobility, the blood draining from her face. The fly flew again. It passed directly over Alan. Its body, with a membrane sac of eggs, was now as large as his head. Its widespread transparent wings were beating with a reverberating drone. Alan flung a bottle which was on the table beside him. It missed, crashed against the ceiling, came down with splintering glass and spilling liquid. Fumes spread chokingly over the room. The fly landed again on the floor, larger now, expanding with a horrible rapid growth. Glora flung something, a little wooden rack with a few empty test tubes in it. The rack struck the monstrous fly, but did not hurt it. The fly stood with hairy legs braced under its bulging body. Its multiple-lensed eyes were staring at the humans. And with its size must have come a sense of power, for it seemed to Alan that the monstrous insect had an abnormal alertness as it stood measuring its adversaries, gathering itself to attack them. Only a few seconds had passed. Confused thoughts swept Alan. This fly with its growth would soon fill this room, burst it, burst upward through a wrecked palace, soar out and by the power of its size alone devastate this world. He heard himself shouting, "Father, get back! It's too large! I've got to kill it!" Launch himself upon it? Wrestle with it in a hand-to-hand combat? Alan edged around the center table. He was bathed in cold sweat. This thing was so horrible. It was too large. Half the length of his own body now. In a moment it might be twice that. He was aware of Glora pulling at him, and his father rushing past him with a bottle of liquid and shouting, "Helen, run! You and this girl, get out of here! The other room!" Then Alan saw the things upon the floor. His foot crushed one with a slippery squash. Nameless, hideous, noisome things grown monstrous, risen from their lurking invisibility in the drops of water. Sodden, gray-black and green-slimed monsters of the deep, palpitating masses of pulp. One lay rocking, already as large as a football, with streamers of ooze hanging upon it, and a black ink fluid squirting. Others were rods of red jelly pulp, already as large as lead pencils, quivering, twitching. Germs of disease, these ghastly things enlarging from the invisibility of a drop of water. The fly landed with a thud on the center table. The fumes of the shattered bottle of chemicals were choking Alan. He flung himself toward the monster fly, but Glora held him. "No, escape! The other room!" Dr. Kent was stamping the things upon the floor, pouring acids upon them. Some eluded him. The air in the room was unbreathable. They reached the bedroom. The laboratory was a hideous chaos. They were aware of its outer door opening, disclosing the figure of Poulter, who, undoubtedly, had been attracted by the noise. He shouted a startled oath. Alan heard it above the beating wings of the monster fly. Things lurched at the open door. Poulter banged it upon them and rushed away, shouting the alarm through the palace. Dr. Kent was stammering, "Not the enlarging drug. Glora, child, the other. Hurry!" Alan helped Glora with the opalescent vial. Things were lurching toward this room from the laboratory. Alan, with averted face, choked by the incoming fumes, slammed the door upon the gruesome turmoil. They took the diminishing drug. The bedroom expanded. The hideous sounds from the laboratory and the whole palace now ringing with a wild alarm, then faded into blessed remoteness of distance above them. "I think it is this way, Alan. Off there. A doorway from my bedroom. Poulter always kept it locked, but it leads into a corridor. We must get out of here. A crack under the door. Is that it, off there?" Dr. Kent pointed into the gloomy blur of distance. "We are horribly small. It's so far to run, and I've lost my sense of direction." The drug had ceased its action. The wooden floor of the room had expanded to a spread of cellular surface, ridged with broken, tube-like tunnels, pits and jagged cave mouths. A knothole yawned like a crater 100 feet away. "We are too small," Glora protested hurriedly. The door is where you say, Dr. Kent, but miles away." With the other drug, the room contracted. The floor surface shrank and smoothed a little. The door was distinguishable, a square panel several hundred feet in width and towering into the upper haze. The black line of the crack was visible along its bottom. They ran to it. The top of the crack was 10 feet above their heads. They ran under, across the wide intervening darkness toward a glow of light. Then they came from under the door into a corridor, and shrank against a cliff wall, as with a rush of wind and pounding tread, the blurred shapes of a man's huge feet and legs rushed past. The upper air was filled with rumbling shouts. "We must chance it," exclaimed Dr. Kent. "Too dangerous. So small. Larger, and if they see us, fight our way out." In the turmoil of the doomed palace, no one noticed them. They cast aside all restraint. It was too dangerous to wait. The excessive dose they took of the drug made the corridor shrink with dizzying speed. They rushed along its length. Alan hurled a little man aside who was in their path. Already they were larger than the Poulter people. They squeezed out of a shrinking doorway. The dwindling island was a turmoil. Little figures were plunging from the palace. At the edge of the water, Alan, Glora, and Dr. Kent stood for an instant looking behind them. The palace was rocking. Its roof heaved upward, then smashed and fell aside with the clatter of tumbling masonry. The monstrous fly, its hideous face mashed and oozing, reared itself up, and with broken, torn wings tried to soar away. But it could not. It slipped back. The drone and buzz of its fright sounded over the chaos of noise. Other things came lurching and twitching upward, slithering out. The expanding body of the fly was pushing the palace walls outward. In a moment they collapsed, and it emerged. To Alan and his companions, the scene was all shrinking into a miniature chaos of horror at their shoe-tops. A diminuendo of screams mingled down there. Overhead were the stars, shining peacefully remote. Nearby lay a rapidly narrowing channel of shining water. A tiny city was across it. Lights were moving. The panic had spread from the island to Arena. Beyond the tiny city a range of mountains showed, a cliff gleaming in the starlight, tunnel mouths. Suddenly, against the stars off there, Alan saw the enlarging figure of Poulter, his hunched shape unmistakable. He was facing the other way. He lunged and scrambled into a yawning black hole in the mountains. Poulter was escaping. None of these people except himself had the drugs. He was escaping with the golden cage, out of this doomed atomic world to our Earth above. Glora murmured, "There is our way out, your way, and that is Poulter going. I think he did not see us. So much is growing gigantic here." She clung to Ellen. "Dear one," Dr. Kent muttered, "we will wait a moment, wade across or leap over and follow him out. Babs with him. Dear God, I hope so. This doomed realm." Alan held Glora close, and suddenly he was laughing, a madness, half hysteria. "Why, all this. Why, look, Glora, it's funny. This little world all excited, an ant-hill outraged. Look, there's our giant sailboat." Down near their feet the inch-long sailboat stood at its dock. Tiny human figures were rushing for it. Others, floundering in the water, were trying to climb upon it. Dr. Kent had stepped from the shore a foot or two, and tiny, lashing white rollers rocked the boat, almost engulfing it. Alan's laugh rang out. "God, it's funny, isn't it? All those little creatures, so excited." "Steady, lad." Dr. Kent touched him. "Don't let yourself laugh. A moment now, then we'll wade across. Poulter won't have much start on us. We mustn't get too close to him in size, but try and attack him unawares. We've got to get Babs away from him." The narrowing passage rose hardly to their knees. They stepped ashore well to one side of the toy city. Their growth had almost stopped. But suddenly Alan realized that Glora was diminishing. She had taken the other drug. "Glora! I must go back, Alan. This is my world, doomed perhaps, but I cannot forsake it now. I must give the enlarging drug to my father, and others who can rise and fight these monsters. Glora, Dr. Kent said hurriedly. She's right, Ellen. There is a chance they can save their city. For her to leave them would be dastardly. She cried, You go on up, Ellen. You have enough of the drugs. Leave me, dear one. I am going back. No, he protested. You must not. Or if you do, I'll come with you. She clung to him. He felt her body diminishing within his encircling arms. His love for her swept him. This girl who had cajoled Poulter or tricked him, stolen several of the little vials from him heaven knows how, and followed him up to the other world. This girl, whom Alan now knew he loved, was leaving him. Forever. As he stood there, with the miniature landscape at his feet in the wan starlight, the panic-stricken tiny city, the island with its monsters rising to overwhelm this microscopic world, it seemed to Alan that if he let her go, it was the end for him of all life's promised happiness. "Alan, lad, come!" His father was pulling at him. So horrible a choice. Alan thought that I was back on that island, but Babs, a prisoner in the golden cage, was with Poulter, plunging upward in size, and his father was beside him, pleading. "Alan, come! I can't get out alone, nor save Babs. And the maddened Poulter, with the power of this drug, can conquer and enslave our Earth as he has enslaved Orina. Just one little city of one tiny golden atom. Believe me, lad, your duties lie above." Glora's head was now down at Alan's waist. He stooped and kissed her white forehead. His fingers, just for an instant, smoothed her glossy hair. "Goodbye, Glora. Dear one, goodbye." She plunged away, and her tread as she dwindled mashed the forest behind the city. Alan and his father ran for the cliff. They were too large to squeeze into the little hole, but in a moment they made themselves smaller. They climbed as they dwindled, checked the drug action, and rushed into the tunnel mouth. Alan stopped just for an instant to gaze out over the starlit scene. It was almost the same viewpoint from which he had had his first sight of Glora's world only an hour or two before. The distant island beyond the city showed plainly with the shining water around it. The vegetation there was growing, and there were dark, horribly formless blobs lurching outward and rising with monstrous bulk against the background of the stars. "Alan, come, lad!" With a prayer for Glora trembling on his lips, Alan plunged into the dim phosphorescent gloom of the tunnel. Chapter 10. The Escape. To Babs and me, the ride in the golden cage strapped to Poulter's chest as he made his escape outward into largeness was an experience awesome and frightening almost beyond conception. We heard the alarm in the palace on the island. Poulter rushed to Dr. Kent's laboratory door, looked in, and in a moment banged it shut. Babs and I saw very little. We knew only that something horrible had happened. We could see only a blur with formless things in the void beneath our bars, and there were the choking fumes of chemicals surging at us. Poulter rushed through the castle corridor. We heard rumbling, distant shouts. "The drug is loose! The drug is loose! Monsters! Death for everyone!" The room swayed with horrible dizzying lurches as Poulter ran. We clung to the lattice bars, our legs and arms entwined. There were moments when Poulter leapt or suddenly stooped, and our reeling senses all but faded. "Babs, Babs, darling, don't let go! Don't lose consciousness!" If she should be limp, here in this lurching room, her body to be flung back and forth across its confines, that would be death in a moment. I feared I could not hold her. I managed to get an arm about her waist. "Babs!" "I'm all right, George. I can stand it. He is enlarging." "Yes." I saw water far beneath us, lashed into a turmoil of foam with Poulter's wading steps. There was a brief swaying vista of a toy city. Starlight overhead. A lurching, swaying miniature of landscape as Poulter ran for the towering cliffs. Then he climbed and scrambled into the tunnel mouth. Had he turned at that instant, Doubtless he would have seen the rising distant figures of Glora, Allen, and Dr. Kent. But he did not see them evidently, nor did we. Poulter spoke only very occasionally to Babs. "Hold tightly." It was a rumbling voice from above us. He made no move to touch the cage, except that a few times the great blur of his hand came up to adjust its angle. The lurching and jolting was less violent in the tunnel. Poulter's frenzy to escape was subsiding into calmness. He traversed the tunnel with a methodical, swinging stride. We were aware of him climbing over the noisome litter of the dead giant's body which blocked the tunnel's further end. We heard his astonished exclamations, but evidently he did not suspect what had happened, thinking only that the stupid messenger had miscalculated his growth and been crushed. We emerged into a less dim area. Poulter did not stop at the fallen giant. Nothing mattered now to him, quite evidently, save his own rapid exit with Babs from this atomic realm. His movements seemed calm, yet hurried. We realized now how different was an outward journey from the trip coming in. This was all only an inch of golden quartz. The stages upward were frequently only a matter of growth in size. The distances in this vast desert realm of golden rock always were shrinking. Poulter many times stood almost motionless until the closing, dwindling walls made him scramble upward into the greater space above. It may have been an hour or less. Babs and I, from our smaller viewpoint, with the landscape so frequently blurred by distance and Poulter's movements, seldom recognized where we were. But I realized that going out was far easier in every way than coming in. Easier to determine the route, since usually the diminishing caverns and gullies made the upward step obvious. We knew when Poulter scrambled up the incline ramp. It seemed impossible for us to plan anything. Would Poulter make the entire trip without a stop? It seemed so. We had no drugs. Our cage was barred beyond possibility of our getting out. But even if we had had the drugs, or had our door been open, there was no escape. An abyss of distance was always yawning beyond our lattice, the sheer precipice of Poulter's body from his chest to the ground. "Babs, we must make him stop. If he sits down to rest, you might get him to take you out. I must reach his drugs." "Yes, I'll try it, George." Poulter was momentarily standing motionless as though gazing around him, judging what to do next. His size seemed stationary. Beyond our bars we could see the distant circular walls as though this were some giant crater pit in which Poulter was standing. Then I thought I recognized it, the round, nearly vertical pit into which Allen had plunged his hand and arm. Above us, then, was a gully, blind at one end, and above that the outer surface, the summit of the fragment of golden quartz. "Babs, I know where we are. If he takes you out, keep his attention. I'll try and get one of his black vials. Make him hold you near the ground. If I see you there, in position where you can jump, I'll startle him." "Oh, Babs, dear, it's desperately dangerous, but I can't think of anything else. Jump, get away from here. I'll keep his attention on me. Then I'll join you if I can, with the drug." Poulter was moving. We had no time to say more. Yes, I'll try it, George." For just an instant she clung to me with her soft arms about my neck. Our love was sweeping us in this desperate moment, and it seemed that above us was a remote earth world holding the promise of all our dreams. Or were we star-crossed, doomed like the realm of the atom? Was this swift embrace now marking the end of everything for us? Babs called, "Dr. Poulter?" We could feel his movement stopping. "Yes? You are all right, Babs?" She laughed, a ripple of silvery laughter, but there was tragic fear in her eyes as she held her gaze on me. "Yes, Dr. Poulter, but breathless. Almost dead, but not quite. What happened? I want to come out and talk to you." "Not now, little bird." "But I want to." To me it was a miracle that she could call so lightly and hold that note of lugubrious laughter in her voice. "I am hungry. Don't you think of that? And frightened. Take me out." He was sitting down. "You remind me that I am tired, Babs, and hungry also. I have a little food. You shall come out for just a short time." "Thank you. Take me carefully." Our tilted cage was near the ground as he seated himself, but still it was too far for me to jump. I murmured, "Babs." "Wait, George, I'll fix that. You hide. If he looks in, he'll see you where you are now." I scrambled back to my hiding place. Poulter's huge fingers were fumbling at our bars. The little door sprang open. "Come, Babs." He held the cupped bowl of his palm to the doorway. "Come out." "No," she called. "It's too far down." "Come, that is foolish." "No, I'm afraid. Put the cage on the ground." "Babs." His finger and thumb came reaching in to seize her, but she avoided them. "Dr. Poulter, don't! You'll crush me." "Then come out on my hand." He seemed annoyed. I had scrambled back to the doorway. I knew he could not see me so long as the cage remained strapped to his shirt front. I whispered, "I can make it, Babs." Poulter was apparently on one elbow, half turned on his side. From our cage, the sloping, gleaming white surface of his stiff, glossy shirt bosom went down a steep incline. His belt was down there, and the outward bulging curve of his lap, a spreading surface where I could land like a scuttling insect, unobserved, if only Babs could hold his attention. I whispered vehemently, "Try it! Go out! Leave me! Keep talking to him!" She called instantly, "Very well then. Bring me your hand. Closer. Carefully. It seems so high up here." She swung herself to his palm and flung her arms about the great pillar of his up-crooked finger. The bowl of his hand moved slowly away. I heard her calling voice and his overhead rumble. I chanced it. I could not determine the exact position or which way he was looking. Again I heard Babs' voice. "Careful, Dr. Poulter. Don't let me fall." "Yes, little bird." I let myself down from the tilted doorway, hung by my hands, and dropped. I struck the ramp-like, yielding surface of his shirt bosom. I slid, tumbling, scrambling, and landed softly in the huge folds of his trouser fabric. I was unhurt. The width of his belt, high as my body, was near me. I shrank against it. I found I could cling to its upper edge. My hold came just in time. He shifted and sat up. I was lifted with a swoop of movement. When it steadied, I saw above me the top of his knee. His left leg was crooked, the foot drawn close to him. Babs was perched up there on the knee summit. His right leg was outstretched. I was at the right side of his belt. I could dart off along that curving expanse of his leg and leap to the ground, if he would hold his position. One of the pouches of his belt was near me. The vial in it was black. The enlarging drug. I moved toward it. But Babs was too high to jump from that summit of his crooked knee. I think she saw me at his belt. I heard her voice. "I cannot eat up here. It is too high. Oh, please be careful how you move. I am so dizzy, so frightened. You move with such great jerks." He had what seemed a huge surface of bread and meat. He was breaking off crumbs to put before her. I reached the pouch of his belt. The vial was as long as my body. I tugged to try and lift it out. All the giant contours of Poulter's body shifted as he cautiously moved. I clung. I saw that Babs was being held gently between his thumb and forefinger. He lowered her to the ground, and she stood beside the bread and meat he had placed there. And she had the courage to laugh. "Why, this is an enormous sandwich. You will have to break it." He was leaning over her, half turned on his left side. The vial came free. I shoved it, but I could not control its weight. I pushed desperately. It slid over the round brink of his right hip and fell behind him. I heard the tinkling thud of it down on the rocks. There was no alarm. I could not chance leaping from his hip. I scurried along the convex top of his outstretched leg, and beyond his knee I jumped. I landed safely. I could see the black vial back across the broken rock surface, with the bulge of Poulter's hip above it. I ran back and reached the vial, tugged at its huge stopper. The cork began to yield under my panting, desperate efforts. In a moment I would have a pellet of the enlarging drug. Make away with it, startle Poulter so that Babs might dart off and escape. The huge stopper of the vial was larger than my head. It came suddenly out. I flung it away, plunged in my hand, and seized an enormous round pellet. Then, abruptly, the alarm came, and I had not caused it. Poulter ripped out a startled, rumbling curse and sat upright. Under the curve of his leg, I saw that Babs had been momentarily neglected. She was running. Across the boulder-strewn plain, two tiny men had appeared. Poulter had seen them. They were the enlarging figures of Dr. Kent and Allen. Chapter 11. The Combat of Size. The astounded Poulter was taken wholly by surprise. He could have had no idea that anyone was following him. He thought he was alone with the tiny Babs in this rock-strewn metal desert. What he saw as he scrambled to his feet were 4 insect-sized humans, 2 of them at a distance and 2 within reach of him, and all of them scampering in different directions. The ground was littered with crags and boulders, was ridged and pitted, pockmarked, with tiny crater holes and caves. The 4 scuttling figures almost instantly had disappeared from his sight. I did not see where Babs went. I turned from the black vial of Poulter's enlarging drug, and with the huge pellet under my arm I ran leaping over the rough ground and flung myself into a gully. I lay prone, flattened against a rock. In the murky distance of a pseudo-sky overhead, the monstrous head and shoulders of Poulter were visible. I could see down to just below his waist. The empty cage with its door flapping open hung against his shirt front. He had stooped to try and recover Babs, and instinctively his hands went to his belt to seize his enlarging drug. They were fumbling there now. He hauled out an opalescent vial of the diminishing element, but his black vial was gone. His frown spread into fear as he searched for it in the other compartments of his belt. I had thought that he had more than one black vial, but now it seemed not. His huge face was swept with the panic of terror. He flung a wild glance around him. Through the open end of my gully I saw in the distance, miles away, the enlarging figure of Allen rising up. Then it ducked back of a distant rocky peak. Poulter undoubtedly saw it. He was fumbling with his opalescent vial, and with confused panic upon him he made the mistake of taking the diminishing drug, and instantly seemed to regret it. His curse rumbled above me. His glance went down to the rocks at his feet, and there he saw lying his black vial with its stopper out. His body already was beginning to dwindle. He stooped, seized the vial, and took the enlarging drug. The shock of it made him stagger. Momentarily he disappeared from my line of vision, but I could hear his panting breath and the unsteady pound of his footsteps. I still held the huge round ball of the drug. I seized a loose stone and frantically knocked off a chunk. Heaven knows how much, I do not. I shoved it into my mouth, chewed and hastily swallowed it. And with the lurching, swaying, shrinking gully closing in upon me, I ran to get out of its distant open end. I was heading toward where Allen and his father were lurking. I came from the gully into the open, just as the walls closed behind me. The whole scene was a dizzying blurred sway of contracting movement. I saw that I was in a circular valley now some 5 miles in diameter, with its jagged enclosing walls rising sheerly perpendicular out of sight in the haze overhead. Poulter had staggered backward. I saw him a mile or so away. His back at that instant was turned to me. He was now no more than 3 or 4 times my own height. He scrambled against the valley cliff wall as though trying to find a foothold to climb up it. He went a little way, but fell back. Near me, Allen and old Dr. Kent suddenly appeared. I was larger. They flung themselves at my knees. Allen gasped, "You, George, you got Babs?" "Yes, Babs is around here somewhere. Stay down here. Don't lose her in size. Stay small. Search and—" "But George—" "I'll tackle Poulter. I've taken— God, I don't know how much I've taken of the drug." They were shrinking down by my boot-tops. Allen shouted suddenly, "There's Babs! Thank God, there's Babs!" She was too small. I could not see her, nor even hear her, though she must have been calling to them. Alan again screamed up at me with his little voice. "She's here, George! You, go on and get Poulter! I can't overtake you! You haven't enough of the drug!" His tiny voice was fading away. "Go on and get him, George! This time, get him!" I swung with a staggering step around to face the open valley. It was shrunken now to barely half a mile of width. Its smooth walls rose some 2,000 or 3,000 feet to an upper circular horizon, with murky distance overhead. Poulter stood across from me. He had tried to climb out, but could not. He saw me and came lurching. We were a quarter of a mile from each other. I ran forward through a shifting scene of shrinking rock walls and crawling, contracting ground. Quarter of a mile? It seemed hardly more than a score of running strides before Poulter loomed close ahead of me. He was still nearly twice my size. I stooped, seized a loose boulder, and flung it. I missed his face, but as his hand went up carrying a bared knife blade, by fortunate chance the stone struck his wrist. The knife dropped to the rocks. He stooped to recover it, but I was upon him. As I felt his huge arms go around me, half lifting me, my foot struck the knife. But in an instant it was swept down into the smallness beneath us as we expanded above it. Both of us were unarmed in this combat of size. I was a half-grown youth in Poulter's first grip upon me. I heard his panting words, grimly triumphant. "This, George Randolph, I have been waiting for so many, many years. The hunchback takes his revenge now." He lifted me. His great arms were horribly powerful, but I could feel them dwindling. I was enlarging faster. Just a few moments, if I could last a few moments. My feet were off the ground, my chest close pressed against the little golden cage between us. He had a hand shoving back my head. His fingers sought my throat. I wound my legs around him, and then he tried to throw me down and fall upon me. But we had twisted, and my back was to the cliff. The rocks were shoving at us, insistently pushing with almost a living movement. Poulter staggered with me. His grip on my throat tightened, shutting off my breath. My senses whirled. His grim, sardonic face over me was blurred to my sight. I tore futilely at my throat to break his choking grip. All the world was a roaring chaos to my fading senses. Then, in the blur, I saw horror sweep his expression. His fingers involuntarily loosened. I got a breath of blessed air, gasping, and my sight cleared. Walls were closing around us. We were in a pit barely 10 feet wide, with the top a few feet above Poulter's head. The nearer wall shoved us again. Our bodies almost filled the shrinking pit. Poulter lurched and cast me off. I half fell, striking my shoulder against the opposite wall, and I saw Poulter leap at the dwindling brink and scramble out. I was nearly wedged. As I rose, the top of the pit only reached my waist. Poulter had fallen on the upper ground and was on hands and knees. Instead of standing up, he lurched at me, tried to shove me back. But I was out. I clutched at him. We were almost of a size now. We rolled on the ground, locked together, rolled to the brink of the pit and over it, as it shrank to a little round hole unnoticed beneath our threshing bodies. At the side of the circular valley, Alan and Dr. Kent crouched with the smaller figure of Babs between them. They saw Poulter and me as two swaying gigantic forms locked in a death struggle, towering against the sky. Tremendous, expanded bodies. They saw us come to grips, saw the great hunched Poulter bend me backward, choking me. Our bodies lurched. Our huge legs with a single step brought us to the center of the valley. It was a shrinking valley to Alan, Babs, and Dr. Kent, for they too were enlarging. But the fighting giant figures were growing faster. In only a moment their shoulders were up there in the sky, pressing against the narrowing cliff walls. Alan gasped. "But George will be crushed! Look at him!" Horror swept them as they crouched, watching. The enormous pillars of Poulter's legs towered straight up from near at hand. Alan was aware of himself screaming, "George, out! You're too large! Too large for in here!" As though his microscopic voice could reach me, my head hundreds of feet above him. But he screamed it again. This was all in a few horrible moments, though it seemed to the three watchers an eternity. Alan was helpless to aid me. They had taken all of the enlarging drug they had. Then they saw Poulter cast me off. I lurched and struck, with my shoulders wedged against the cliff directly over where they crouched. The overhead sky was darkened as Poulter scrambled upward. Alan was still screaming futilely, "George! Up! Get out!" Babs huddled with white, horrified face, staring. Then I went out after Poulter. My disappearing legs were great dark blurs in the sky. Alan saw the valley now contracted to 1,000 feet of width, with its cliffs equally as high. Then everything was smaller. The sky overhead went dark again. From cliff to cliff a segment of our rolling bodies momentarily spanned the opening. And presently Alan realized that the valley had narrowed to a pit. He stood up. "Hurry! Now we can get out after them! Up there!" The opening above was empty. Poulter and I were fighting some distance away. Dr. Kent was soon large enough to scramble out of the pit. Alan handed the little Babs up to him and followed. Alan saw that they were now in a long gully, blind at one end with a 500-foot perpendicular cliff. Against the wall the titanic form of Poulter stood at bay, and I was fronting him. The summit of the cliff was lower than our waists. Triumph swept Alan. He saw that I was the larger. As Poulter bored into me, my backward step crossed the full width of the gully. Alan shouted, "Down! Babs! Father!" They had barely time to flatten themselves in a narrow crevice between upstanding rocks before my foot crashed down. For an instant the sole of my boot formed a flat black ceiling as it trod and spanned the rocks. Then it lifted, was gone with a blurred swoop. They saw the white blur of my hand come down and snatch a tremendous boulder, raising it with a great sweep of movement into the sky. They saw me crash it against Poulter, but it only struck his shoulder. He roared with anger. The whole sky was roaring and rumbling with our shouts and our panting breathing, and the ground was clattering, pounding with our giant tread. Huge loose boulders were tumbling in an avalanche everywhere. Again it seemed to Alan that our lurching, heedlessly surging bodies must be crushed within these contracting walls. Only our locked, intertwined legs were visible. Our bodies were lost in the sky. Then it seemed to Alan that I had heaved Poulter upward, and followed him. We disappeared. There was a distant overhead rumble, and the murky sky, with vague patches of far-distant illumination in it, became empty of movement. The walls presently were again closing upon Alan and his companions. They ran out of the open end of the shrinking little gully and came to a new upward vista. I found myself a full head and shoulders taller than Poulter, and he was tiring, panting heavily. His face was cut and bleeding from the blows of my fists. The rock I heaved struck his shoulder. He roared, head down, and bored into me. He was heavier than I. His weight flung me back. My foot slid on the loose stones of the gully floor. I did not know that Babs, Alan, and their father were huddled under those stones. My back struck the opposite wall. Poulter's upflung knee caught me in the stomach, all but knocking the breath from me. He was desperate, oblivious to the closing walls. And as he flung his arms with a grip about my neck, hanging, trying to bear me down, I saw in his blazing dark eyes what seemed the light of suicide. I think that then, with a sudden frenzied madness, he realized that he was beaten, and he tried to pull us to the ground and let the walls crush us. I summoned all my remaining strength and heaved us forward. I broke his hold. His body was jammed back against a lowering wall. Its top seemed almost at our knees. I shoved frantically. He fell backward, and I jumped after him. We were on a great rocky plateau, but it was shrinking, crawling into itself. Spots of light were in the murk overhead. There seemed a distant circular horizon of emptiness around us. Poulter was lying in a heap, but it was trickery, for as I incautiously bent over him, his hand crashed a rock against my head. I reeled, with all the world turning black, but did not fall. There was a horrible instant when my senses were going, but I fought to hold them. Blood from a wound on my forehead was streaming in my eyes. I was staggering. Then I realized I was grimly tossing my head, shaking the blood away, and little by little my sight came back. Poulter was on his feet, rushing me. His fist came with an upward swing at my chin, but I ducked my head aside at the last moment. And suddenly, fighting up there in the open, my mind envisaged how gigantic we were. This was a great upland plateau, rounded with miles of distance and a shadowy, dimly radiant abyss beyond its circular horizon. And I was 1,000 feet or more tall, a titan looming here in the sky. My fist, quite unexpectedly, caught Poulter's jaw. His simultaneous swing went wild, though I leapt backward from it. He staggered, and his arms dropped to his sides. I was crouched forward, guarded, watching him while I gasped for breath. There was the briefest of instants when an expression of vague surprise swept his face, but I had not knocked him out. It was death overtaking him. His heart was yielding, overtaxed from this strain, and I think there at the last he realized it. The blood drained suddenly from his face and lips, leaving them livid. I saw fear, then a wild horror in his eyes. He stood swaying. Then his knees gave way and he toppled. He fell from his height in the air where I stood gazing at him, fell forward on his face, his titanic length spread all across the top of this rocky landscape. For a moment I did not move. My head was reeling, my ears roaring. Blood streamed into my eyes. I wiped it away with a torn sleeve and stood panting, gazing at the glowing distance around me. I was a titan standing there. The body of Poulter was shrinking at my feet. The circular abyss of emptiness came nearer as this rocky eminence contracted. Suddenly my attention went to the sky overhead. Vague distant lights were there. Then a broad flat blur seemed spread over me. Light everywhere was growing. Beyond the nearby brink of the abyss was a white reflected radiance from beneath. Abruptly I realized there was a level, flat white plain running far off there in the distance. Overhead a radiance contracted into a spot of light. A shape in the sky moved. I heard a far-away rumble, a human voice. The body of Poulter lay at my feet. It was hardly the length of my forearm as I stood, a titan. And then, with a shock of realization, I saw how tiny I was. This was the broken top of that fragment of golden quartz the size of a walnut. I was standing there, under the lens of the giant microscope in Poulter's dome room laboratory, with half a dozen astounded Quebec police officials peering down at me. Chapter 12. Mysterious Little Golden Rock. I need not detail the aftermath of our emergence from the atom. Dr. Kent and Babs followed me out within a few moments, but Alan was not with them. He had seen Poulter fall. His father and Babs were safe. The sacrifice he had made in leaving Laura was no longer needed. Down there on the rocky plateau, Dr. Kent suddenly realized that Alan was dwindling. "Father, I must. Don't you understand? Glora's world is menaced. I can't leave her like this. My duty to you and Babs is ended. I did my best, Dad. You two are safe now." "Alan, my boy!" He was already down at Kent's waist, Bab's size. He held up his hand. "Dad, goodbye." His rugged, youthful face was flushed, his voice choked. You have been a mighty good father to me. Always." Babs flung her arms about him. "Ellen, don't." "But I must." He smiled whimsically as he kissed her. "You wouldn't want to leave George, would you? Never see him again? I'm not asking you to do that, am I?" "But Ellen, you've been a great little pal, Babs. I'll never forget it." "Ellen, you talk as though you were never coming back." "Do I? But of course I'm coming back." He cast her off. "Babs, listen. Father's upset. That's natural. You tell him not to worry. I'll be careful and do what I can to save that little city. I must find Glora and—" Babs was suddenly trembling with eagerness for him. "Yes, of course you must, Alan." "Find her and bring her out here. I'll do it. Don't you worry." He was dwindling fast. Dr. Kent had collapsed to a rock, staring down with horror-stricken eyes. Alan called up to Babs. "Listen. Have George watch the chunk of gold quartz. Have it guarded and watch day and night. Handle it carefully, Babs." "Yes, yes. How long will you be gone, Alan?" "Heavens, how do I know? But I'll come back, don't you worry. Maybe in only a day or two of your time." "Right. Goodbye, Alan." "Goodbye!" His tiny voice echoed up. "Goodbye, Babs, Father." Babs could see his miniature face smiling up at her. She smiled back and waved her arm as he vanished into the pebbles at her feet. The eyes of youth. They look ahead. They see all things so easily possible. But old Dr. Kent was sobbing. It has broken Dr. Kent. A month now has passed. He seldom mentions Alan to Babs and me, but when he does, he tries to smile and say that Alan soon will return. He has been very ill this last week, though he is better now. He did not tell us that he was working to compound another supply of the drugs, but we knew it very well. And his emotion, the strain of it, made him break. He was in bed a week. We are living in New York, quite near the Museum of the American Society for Scientific Research. In a room of the biological department there, the precious fragment of golden quartz lies guarded. A microscope is over it, and there is never a moment of the day or night without an alert, keen-eyed watcher peering down. But nothing has appeared. Neither friend nor foe, nothing. I cannot say so to Babs, but often I fear that Dr. Kent will suddenly die, and the secret of his drugs die with him. I hinted once that I would make a trip into the atom if he would let me, but it excited him so greatly I had to laugh it off with the assurance that of course Alan will soon return safely to us. Dr. Kent is an old man now, unnaturally old, with, it seems, the full weight of 80 years pressing upon him. He cannot stand this emotion. I think he is despairingly summoning strength to work upon his drugs, fearful that he will not be equal to it. Yet more fearful to disclose the secret and unloose so diabolical a power. There are nights when, with Dr. Kent asleep, Babs and I slip away and go to the museum. We dismiss the guard for a time, and in that private room we sit hand in hand by the microscope to watch. The fragment of golden quartz lies on its clean white slab with a brilliant light upon it. Mysterious little golden rock. What secrets are there down beyond the vanishing point in the realm of the infinitely small? Our human longings go to Alan and to Glora. But sometimes we are swept by the greater viewpoint. Awed by the mysteries of nature, we realize how very small and unimportant we are in the vast scheme of things. We envisage the infinite reaches of astronomical space overhead, realms of largeness unfathomable, and at our feet everywhere are myriad entrances into the infinitely small. With ourselves in between, with our fatuous human consciousness that we are of some importance to it all. Truly, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy.